Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are live, and it's Tuesday, May 26th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We've got a lot to talk about today, and we've got a very green pre-market to get into and all the headlines to discuss that are contributing to this green pre-market. 751.75 hundo in the pre-market for the S&P 500. Even Bitcoin, which was falling last night by like $3,000, is starting to come back. 77,000 on Mr. BTC. Micron, they got a big upgrade this morning. We'll talk about that. 814, that's up 9%. AMD is up 3%. 482. Enlit Renewables. All the solar panel companies are getting a bid today because they just signed a 15-year lease with Google for 800 megawatts of battery storage, which means your end phases, your first solars, all of those are green. You got a lot of different headlines over the weekend in regards to Trump and Iran, and you got everything getting some love. ASTS, that's up 6.5%. Rocket Lab is busting through 140 in the pre-market, which, I mean, the stock was $70 less than a month ago. It is now $142. Meta, that's up a little bit. The Qs are up 1%. Coherent is up. Oracle's up. Google's up. You got everything pretty much making a move. Some of these names making a bigger move than other names, but it's happening. It's one of those days that's relatively green. And quite frankly, again, sell in May, go away has not been the thematic for May. We will see what happens in June and July, but if we end out this week at the levels that we're at right now, the S&P 500 will be on its best streak in the stretch that it has been since the ceasefire, about 8 weeks, up 18% since 2020. Some of that is very scary to some people based on some of these stats and how it's being interpreted. A lot of that is driven by earnings, which is why it's not that scary. Over the weekend, we had a ton of updates over oil and bond yields, which we will discuss, which I think is really contributing to why the markets are going up the way they are in the pre-market. Oil is below 100. It was below 90 last night, so you got a little bit of a big move right there, 92.99, up from where it was last night. But the point is it's down, and it's down for the right reasons. And if that continues to go down, which hopefully all the intentions are that it will continue to go down, you're likely to have the biggest bear case from the macro removed, which are these rising bond yields. The 10-year, 4.7 to 4.48, still not in the best situation, but definitely a lot better than what it was yesterday or last week. And as a result of that, I think it's kind of natural that you're seeing the equity markets start to gain some of that momentum. And we'll talk more about why that's happening right here as we get through the show. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let's get into it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Yes, we will talk about SoFi, big podcast over the weekend. Thank you for everyone who tuned into the podcast and enjoyed. Definitely have some thoughts on it. Overall, I mean, there was just a lot of enthusiasm and excitement around the pod, and I'm happy people enjoyed it. And happy we gave note of the platform to be able to discuss. And you have a lot of other headlines over the weekend that I think are more so contributing to SoFi moving up right here in the pre-market. The war potentially being war potentially being over and oil coming down is one of the bigger reasons. But obviously, I do think the pod, got a lot more people to be a little bit more excited about holding SoFi. And you're seeing some of that momentum right there. Look at the S&P up 1%, almost 1% pre-market. Just incredible. Again, we'll break down all the macro reasons. We'll also talk about, what could be a potential sell the news and some of the bear cases around a few of the things that happened over the weekend. But in general, just like over the past couple of weeks, the bulls are in control. And quite frankly, the bulls have been in control, even in the midst of the little bit of a hiccup we had over the past 5 days in the semiconductor stocks. And if they continue to be in control, then we likely continue to see the market gain strength. S&P 500 right there, 751 in the pre-market. Josh, Chels, Austin, what's up, what's up, what's up? Thank you for being here. Nick, Viraj, good morning, good morning. Blake Anderson says, check Rocket Lab. It is above 140. We checked it. I couldn't believe it last night. Last night, it was like barely pushing 140, and before I went to sleep, I took a look at it, and it was like 143. I was like, okay. It's just, forget normalizing 100, forget normalizing 120. We are, who knows if this thing goes to 200, dude? Like, at this point, who freaking knows with the SpaceX IPO? We're going to see a potential new floor that is set for the stock. June, good morning. Antonio, Marcus, Eric, what's up, what's up, what's up? What happened to the Tom Lee 7,300 pullback? I don't know if that thesis fully can be ruled out yet. I think we got to go at least another month where we normalize above these levels. Obviously, the summer is the toughest time for tech stocks, but It's 7,300 pullback based on the idea of Kevin Warsh being challenged as the new Fed chair. I mean, historically, yes, we've had those drawdowns. I don't know if it happens with earnings this good, and that's kind of the core story that has led to this market being as strong as it is. Swing Master, what's up? Jay, what's up? Max, Stano, Golden, Sid, good morning. Oh, it is Tuesday. Why does it feel like Monday? It is Tuesday. He says happy Tuesday. I was like, yeah, it is Tuesday. Kind of forget. It feels like a Monday, right? But it is indeed Tuesday. Yesterday we were off, so we had the future show, but we are officially live here, getting ready for the week. All right, let's get started. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. Good morning. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the long weekend, at least if you're in the States. And well, it looks like this week is setting up for another strong week of momentum if we can keep some of this macro volatility to the downside continuing. Also, the Knicks, baby. Talk about a sweep. Talk about a sweep. I'm looking to try to go to a game at the Madison Square Garden. And unfortunately, the tickets are kind of stupid. Like even the tickets right now, it's not fully confirmed yet, but they're $4,000 for the lowest price ticket, which I just don't know if I'm going to be able to pay $4,000. So I would like to go, but it looks like game 3 and 4 in Madison Square Garden are going to be some of the highest valued Knicks games. So we haven't been to the finals since 1999. So it's been a while, but yeah, it would be kind of fun to, no way. It legit is 4,000. Let me just post a screenshot real quick. I posted this last night because I looked it up. I was like, you know what? I'm not that far from Madison Square Garden. It would be very nice to, go and see it. And these were this is it. This is crazy, dude. Courtside is $92,000, which I'm not paying. If you want to get a little bit in the back, $18,000, and then the very cheapest price is $4,944. So it would be fun to go, but we're gonna have to see what ends up happening. All right, let's get into it. So start off with why the markets are going up, at least in terms of what happened macro-wise. There was a U.S.-Iran peace deal that essentially was agreed to, even though it was not fully agreed to. We still need a lot more details, but this is kind of the core details that we have right now. An extension of the Iran war ceasefire for another 60 days. The Strait of Hormuz will be reopened for the 60-day period. Iran would be freely able to sell oil during the period. U.S. would lift the blockade on Iranian ports and unfreeze some Iranian funds. The U.S. would issue some sanction waivers on Iranian oil, which would lead to a lot of money for Iran, obviously getting to, get access to the sanctions that they have never been able to, or the goods that they've been sanctioned from for the past 15 years. The draft memorandum of understanding includes a statement that the war between Israel and Lebanon would end as well. There were reported attacks yesterday in Lebanon. So again, that's up in the air. There were also U.S. attacks. The U.S. said that was a response. The U.S. Central Command said that was a response to the IRGC. So didn't really affect the markets, but nonetheless, there were some attacks last night. Negotiations would then be held regarding Iran's nuclear program. Now, this is a relatively simple draft memo that I think we have heard this story over and over again in terms of how this thesis could play out. Trump then tweeted last night, the enriched uranium or nuclear dust will either be removed and turned over to the United States or brought home and destroyed, or preferably in conjunction and coordination with the Islamic Republic of Iran, destroyed in place or at another acceptable location with the Atomic Energy Commission or its equivalent being witness to this process and event. So basically, Trump is saying, hey, the deal is done, but the core element of the deal, which is why I don't think they've officially announced it in conjunction with the Pakistanis and the Iranians, the Pakistanis are helping to mediate it, is this enriched uranium issue and what's going to happen with this. And until that is resolved, I don't think oil seriously comes down to the levels that it needs to come down for CPI and PPI to not be that big of an issue. Now, it fell to 90 last night, almost fell below 90. We're at 92 right now. So the fact that it's actually up a little bit in the pre-market from those levels last night is the market essentially saying, hey, we're not fully sure if we can immediately price out all the issues with oil. And there's a lot of issues with oil that are going to be taking place probably over the next decade based on everything that's happened. But that core idea that we are not going to have an issue in regards to the supply, because 20% of the world's oil will not be stuck inside of a strait that is not open, is, I think, the fundamental reason why oil will come down. And obviously that'll be good for the potential for rate cuts, which is kind of, going to be important for not only the broader economy, credit cards, student loans, but also a lot of these growth stocks that are contingent right now on getting those rate cuts. So that was the big update over the weekend. For those that are wondering, why are we blistering green? Why are we hitting new all-time highs? Why are the semis ripping? It really is that. I think a lot of us had this thesis, I think the whole market understood that if the war ends, oil comes down, bond yields come down, more money comes flowing back into the markets. And you're seeing that thesis play out right now in the pre-market. Now, is it a sell? The news, couple banks already came out this morning and said, yes, the most bullish and optimistic scenario of the war ending has officially been priced in with this new all-time high up 1% on the S&P that you're seeing right now. And any additional catalysts would have to be monumental. Earnings growth, strong supply-demand dynamics for chip stocks. All of that is something that is now expected. It's not like a core catalyst. This war ending was the core catalyst. And, maybe that core catalyst is baked in. You're not necessarily going to have that type of catalyst create more momentum, but it's also probably going to bring a lot of people off the sidelines that have been waiting to get into the equity markets because of this war being the inhibitor. And now that that's done, I think you just might see a fresh amount of capital coming in, which would be very exciting. Robinhood right there up 1.5%, Coinbase up 1.3%, Rock Lab again up 5%, ASTS up 6%, and then Redwire, this stock, 13% as that continues to go green. Okay, Micron. So let's talk about what's happening right here. 814, that's up 8.44%. That is helping all of your memory names. The reason this one is up right now in the pre-market is because they got an upgrade from UBS. And that upgrade from UPS, Oklo also signed a big deal this morning, so we'll talk about that. That upgrade from UBS basically is getting rid of the core bear case that I think some of the memory bulls or the memory bears have been worried about, which is the sustainability of growth. So they raised their price target from $500 to $1,600, $1,625. So obviously a massive increase in the price target. And the reason for that is because we are raising EPS across 2027 to 2029 to $155, $167, and $117 versus $133, $122, and $77. So they essentially see an acceleration going into the next 2 years, whereas they saw a deacceleration in their prior estimate. And the drop-off from 2028 to 2029, based on these LTAs, long-term agreements that they feel have been officially achieved with some of the hyperscalers, is much less than what they thought before. And the reason for that is because it would still be above $100 of EPS into 2029. So because they see MU's EPS remaining above 100 through calendar year 2029, you put a 15 multiple on that, which the average semiconductor stock is at 34 times. And that's how you get to a $1,625 stock price in the forward earnings when it comes to Micron. So that's what you got. It's a very simple kind of argument right there. Now, again, do you believe in the growth and sustainability of those earnings along with the pricing power based on the checks that UBS had? And I think D.A. Davidson had kind of the same point. The hyperscaler deals with some of these memory companies, in particular Micron, Samsung, and SK Hynix, are now going well over 2 years. And as a result of that, because the prices they have right now are being locked into these hyperscaler deals, particularly with NVIDIA, over the coming years, that is what allows them to lock in the pricing power. Even if prices were to fall substantially, let's say tomorrow, the fact that they've locked in these deals with the prices that they are having right now, which are producing 80% gross margins, at least for Micron, is leading to the street to say, okay, well, if we put a basic multiple on it, then yeah, it's probably got to go up. And that's why you're seeing the stock get re-rated right here. So up 8.23%. We're going to see if the street fades this or not. May 13th was the high that a lot of stocks have not been able to get above. And I think today maybe is the day. Micron basically at that May 13th high right now, I think 818 is what it's got to get above. And if the street doesn't fade it, then a lot of these names, whether it's Qualcomm, Micron, not NVIDIA because NVIDIA doesn't go up, but many of these other semiconductor names, AMD up in the pre-market, likely take out those May 13th highs. And we set some new highs for the cycle right here as you're seeing more of these names go green. AMD right there, 483 in the pre-market. All-time high was 481, so that one's already breaking through some of those 52-week highs. Corning right there, that's up about 1.81%. CoreWeave is up 3%. And then Nebius, I think we're still above 220, 223, as that is up 4% as well in the pre-market. So that's what you got on memory, DRAM, Micron, and the other names that are, as a result, following up to green. The other headline that we had on memory real quick is SK Hynix. They introduced a new cooling system to help with their chip architecture for memory, which just makes it easier for, it's called HBF, the HBM to be on the chip and not have to get overheated, essentially. And that took SK Hynix to all-time highs yesterday, as that new architecture basically signaled to the street that, hey, they're innovating in the context of memory, and they're going to be able to really do well when it comes to selling this new product. Speaking of memory, what's also really interesting about this, The emerging markets index has massively outperformed the S&P 500. If you take out Samsung, TSMC, and SK Hynix, 3 companies internationally, 1 from Taiwan, 2 from South Korea, it underperforms dramatically. So the blue line is emerging markets with those 3 companies. The red line is emerging markets without it. It just goes to show the concentration and importance that these companies are putting up in the broader ecosystem of emerging markets, which is that if you don't have these names, the markets aren't really doing that well. Same thing for the S&P 500. 51% of the EPS projections that have increased for 2026 is because of Micron. So, these companies are incredibly important. They matter. They're getting a lot of attention. And obviously, if they can sustain that earnings growth, they're going to continue to be names that are very important for the broader equity markets. And when you think about the international space, Taiwan, with a population of just 23 million people, has surpassed India, which has 1.5 billion people, to become the world's 5th largest stock market, driven largely by the global AI and semiconductor boom. 42% of the index, which has now surpassed India's index, which is quite incredible, just given how big India is versus Taiwan, is TSMC. So TSMC has been kind of the main reason for this, which makes sense. It's obviously TSMC is the biggest company there. But it's quite incredible. South Korea, Taiwan, you're seeing a lot of these countries that were not even in the top 5 starting to play a massive role simply because this AI ecosystem is not easily slowing down. So that's what you got in the context of Taiwan and some of these international stocks, and you're seeing that momentum in the pre-market. Enphase, that's up 4% based on that deal with Google, with Enlit, which is another solar company. That stock up 8%. That's helping Enphase right there, up 4% for all the solar companies. D-Wave's actually down, so some of your quantum names taking a little bit of a breather after they had a massive run last week on those $100 million investments. Is Rigetti down? Rocket Lab still up 4.5%. Rigetti is also down 2.3%. Redwire, even with the dilution last week, Street doesn't care. The space names, the SpaceX IPO, which has been talked about a lot over the weekend. I've seen a lot of different think pieces about the SpaceX IPO. A lot of people saying it is officially the weirdest IPO in history based on how the S1 is disclosing the potential for SpaceX. And a lot of people saying, how do I get my hands on shares? Because I want to be part of this company. So I'm going to be very curious. I think I'm going to be live pretty much all day on June 12th when they IPO. I feel like we have to be live to witness how this IPO turns out. So it'll probably be out around 1 p.m. And I'll be live covering it and seeing what ends up happening. Okay. Some of the other headlines that we have in the pre-market. Let's do a couple of quick little bear articles that came out because I thought this was interesting last night. So this article went viral yesterday. This is the Uber COO saying that they can't fully justify the costs of token maxing, aka paying for unlimited token usage, because it's not really translating to direct product. And then you had something similar said from Microsoft. So here's what they had to say, and here's at least one perspective on how much token usage is actually going to be happening in these enterprises.
Over the last quarter were AI driven, or, our token usage went from X to Y, or percentage of employees, all these sort of numbers. And it's amazing. And I think it's like this massive transformation of society. But then you sometimes go and you talk to your senior engineering leaders and you're saying, okay, how many projects that were on the cutting room floor got moved above the line because of the, productivity gains, because 25% of our code commits were via Claude Code last quarter. That link is not there yet, right? Like you're not, I think maybe implicitly there's more that is getting shipped, but it's very hard to draw a line between one of those stats and, okay, now we're actually producing like 5% more useful consumer features, right? And that line is hard to draw. And I think over the coming quarters and years, like maybe that will become clearer. But I think today it's hard, even if some of the underlying metrics are like trending in a really astronomical direction.
Now, it's interesting. I think there's a couple things to analyze on that. Number one is Uber stock has been hit pretty badly in terms of relative underperformance compared to the NASDAQ. It's down 13% this year. It just really hasn't been a big winner in this AI boom. And I think part of the reason you've got Uber management saying, hey, we don't really see the impact of AI as much as on our business is also because the earnings haven't been strong enough, even though I think the free cash flow on Uber has been unbelievable. Like objectively, Uber's earnings have been amazing, but the stock hasn't reflected that. So they might be seeing the disconnect between the AI productivity that they should be getting versus the amount of tokens that they're giving to their project managers to be able to spend in relationship to how the market's interpreting it. Number two, I do think it's something to keep an eye on, because at the end of the day, if you have more and more COOs and CTOs saying we can't fully justify why we're spending as much as we're spending, The Verge reported yesterday that Microsoft has started canceling Claude code licenses, with a quote from one of the senior executives saying that some of the licenses for their AI coding machines, I guess, AI coding agents, are now costing more than the humans that they used to pay to code. So it's like the cost of tokens needs to come down substantially. I think that's one of the big arguments that people have been waiting for. And hopefully if that does happen, you're going to see a lot more momentum in terms of the volume of it going up, which is basically what we've been seeing over the past couple of months now in the context of Codex and Claude Code. But it is one thing to keep an eye on, like how much translation of actual earnings growth and productivity are we going to see from this unlimited spend of token. And you don't want to see that disconnect happen in any meaningful way. I don't think it's happening. A couple isolated cases here and there is, not that big of a deal, but that would obviously result in lower CapEx and, potentially lower ARR growth for OpenAI and Anthropic, which kind of can't happen. Indian IT people cost less than Claude. Exactly. And then the bullish argument about that is that speaks to the bull case on compute constraints, right? Because if we had more compute, then theoretically tokens wouldn't be more expensive than people in India that are good at coding. And so I think it's actually bullish versus bearish, but it's something to keep an eye on in terms of how some of these executives are trying to justify the amount of token spend that they're ultimately putting out there in their fiscal year budgets. This is another reason why the market is going up. The 12-month EPS estimates are up 14%, even though the S&P is up 9% year to date. So yes, is the forward NTM ratio, at next 12 months PE ratio on the S&P 500 expensive? Yeah. Given the average, it's at 21.3 versus 17.2, but the earnings estimates has continued to go up. And as those earnings estimates continue to go up, the stock price obviously going up in relation to the earnings estimates and far below the earnings estimates. Earnings estimates are 15, S&P 500 is at 9. That right there is your justification for why we're in a bull market and why that bull market has a chance to continue. So I'm curious. I mean, now that we have ripped through all-time highs, what are people thinking? Are you scared, nervous, excited? Are you prepared for this moment? Are you buying the rip? Are you selling the rip? Are you selling puts? Are you buying puts potentially on the broader market? Are you hedging? Are you selling aggressive cover calls? Like, I'm curious how people are kind of thinking of the state of these markets right now that we have officially passed 7,500. Let's do the green or red poll in the chat as well. And I guess, is this what people kind of expected, or is this a little bit of a different market environment that most weren't prepared for? And I think everyone wasn't necessarily prepared for the way this rally has happened, but you have to pick your pockets of it. Either you're deep in Micron and that's your rally. You got some Rock Lab, that's your rally. AMD, that's your rally. Maybe you've got all three, right? But I think this year has been relatively selective. Obviously, if you're heavy in Microsoft, it hasn't been a rally for you. But I don't think if you're 100% Microsoft, which I don't think most retail investors are 100% Microsoft, you've had parts of this rally affecting your portfolio, which you got to be grateful for regardless, even if it's not a type of year where the number one stock that you're in is the stock that's going up 3 or 4x, which has happened for many of us over the coming years. Bloom Energy, that's up another 4%. You got SMCI from the dead, 19 to 35. That's green. Take Two, that's up a little bit. Palo Alto, the cybersecurity names absolutely got re-rated in the SaaS sell-off. Look at AppLovin, that's up 6.03% right here in the pre-market, 510. So that's getting a little bit more love as well. Did I say tomorrow? Look at me, I'm thinking it's Sunday or something. Let me do that again. Green or red today was what I meant to say. Do we have anything big happening this week? It's not the SpaceX IPO. We don't have crazy earnings this week. So after the bell, we have Zscaler. We have Snowflake, Salesforce, and Marvell tomorrow. Okay, so those are actually important. And then we have Dell, which has gone absolutely crazy. Dell busting through $300. It was at $311 last night. We have Costco, Dell, UiPath, MongoDB, and Okta, and then Best Buy on Thursday. Okay, so we still have a decent chunk of companies that are reporting this week. Marvell is going to be big. Salesforce obviously going to be massive. Your software name's still pretty stuck right there. Salesforce down about 0.32%. And then in a few weeks, we will have the SpaceX IPO. Marvell, I think that's up in the pre-market too, right? That's above 200. That is, wow, Marvell 7%. See, this is, I don't think there's a headline on Marvell. This is oil coming down. This is running with the semis. This is absolutely running with the semis right here. I don't see a headline. This one passed 200 last week. The CEO is going to be delivering a keynote on June 2nd at the Computex conference. Yeah, there you go. Marvell is up. Intel, is that up as well? Intel is up about 1.78%. Qualcomm, which hit last night, up 244. That's up another 2.7%. The Qualcomm rumor around the new data center chip, I think that's the big reason I think the street's excited. And, you know, once that becomes official, the market might really start to price that in a much more heavy way. CoreWeave right there, that's up 2.86% as well. Okay. I bought 2 stocks last night. So let's talk about those 2 stocks. I don't think that'll come as too much of a surprise, but they are 2 official new positions for me in the portfolio. I tweeted it last night. So I was up at 1:30 a.m. writing up this thesis. I should have been sleeping, but I was like, no. I got too excited to write it up, and I was like, I need to write it up. By the way, shout out to Iliano doing a Palantir pop-up in Tokyo. Yes, we should be having Technical Tuesday today with Jason. So that'll be after the bell. Take a look at that. All those people waiting in line to get some merch, and Carp made an appearance. That's so awesome, dude. Palantir community, so international. Kind of breaks some of the narrative of people saying it's the worst company in the world when you have all these people that actually like care about it and are willing to wait in line to see the company. You know, it's like, it's pretty cool. So they did in Korea, Japan. Very, very cool for Palantir. All right, 2 stocks that I bought. Reddit and Shopify. Very, very simple thesis on both of these. I think these are incredibly high quality companies. I think that they are compounding earnings at levels that we haven't seen from both of them. Shopify in the past 5 years, they've accelerated revenue growth back up to 30%. Reddit is growing at 70%. And I think the bear case on these is reasonable, but the point is, if you look at the year-to-dates on these stocks, they're down. Reddit's down 40% this year. And the earnings just grew 100%. Revenue just grew 70%. Shopify is down 100, or is down to 103, down 34% this year. At one point, it was at 95, right? So it was even lower than this. And they just grew revenue 35% and had their highest GMV in history, over $100 billion. So the simple thesis on both of these names, and I put this in the tweet. You guys can read it through if you want to see more about the tweet. But just looking at the numbers and then looking at Reddit from a monetization perspective, how they can continue to grow. If you look at the forward earnings estimates, they're expected to grow 30% EPS for the next 4 years, which let's say that's discounted and they actually grow it closer to 32 to 35%. I mean, you're paying 22 times for 2027 earnings for 70% revenue growth and 30% EPS growth. Like, that's a meaningful discount. And that's not a discount that I think theoretically should last for long if the narrative on some of these software stocks changes, which maybe it doesn't. We'll talk about that bear case. But overall, there's nothing to say that's wrong in the numbers as they've continued to execute. Now, Shopify has a higher valuation, so you have to kind of stomach that higher valuation. But Shopify is the cheapest it has traded since 2022. It usually trades at 40 times sales. You're now getting it at 12 times sales. They haven't grown GMV and revenue at the levels that they're growing it at since 2017. So when I looked at the earnings last night and like really took a deeper look at it, the acceleration, this is their second quarter in a row, by the way, of accelerating revenue. They did 31% in Q4 2025, now 34% in Q1 2026. You just haven't seen this type of acceleration for a long time. So for the people saying that Shopify will be vibe coded, it's like, okay, please let it be vibe coded. Like, I would love to see everyone vibe coding their own back-end architecture to handle billions of dollars of sales. Like, please let that be vibe coded. And I'd be very curious to kind of see how that works out just from a security perspective. Could Shopify go down? Yes. And the next buy for me would be closer to the low 90s on Shopify. For Reddit, it would be closer to the 125 to 130 range. I would be happy to buy the dip on those if they actually do come down. I mean, they're both down 40% year to date. If they want to fall another 10%, which they probably will if the market tops, like that's inevitable. That's probably going to happen. But if the market doesn't top, maybe these stocks stay flat. Liquidity probably leads to the semis. I think that's something that could happen. It's something that we've seen happen throughout the entire year. But at some point, the earnings have to be respected on these names, especially if they're not going to be getting killed by the broader market. Yeah, Shopify already writes 50% of their code with AI. I mean, like, I just think the AI thesis is a tailwind for both of these companies, particularly for Shopify. The whole idea of agentic commerce being commoditized by ChatGPT is insane. ChatGPT wants to work with Shopify. They do not want to build vibe-coded e-commerce architecture. They just want to take a little bit of the fee off people finding the newest sunglasses they want to buy when they search for sunglasses on ChatGPT and they get linked to a Shopify website, which is very similar to Facebook's ad model. And I think the rest of these different LLMs are going to be trying to do the same thing when it comes to this. So I wrote an article last night on Substack, 10 different stocks that are getting hit that might deserve a second look. And out of the stocks that are getting hit, Shopify and Reddit were the two new positions that I initiated a position in. And I don't know, dude, like when you look at the earnings growth and the momentum on these, it's not scary to be buying these names right now, given that they're down 40% year to date. Like it just feels easier to sleep at night knowing that they're down 40% now. Will they go up as much as a lot of these semiconductor AI picks and shovels names, which I do have some of, but keeping that position relatively sized appropriately in case things get a little ugly? No, right? Like Nokia's up more than Reddit in the past 2 weeks. And, I bought Nokia on a breakout and it's breaking out even further because it has momentum. Reddit and Shopify have no momentum, but they are solid companies. And I can feel good over the rest of the year, even if they stay flat for the rest of the year, just buying more of them and increasing the position and letting those names, like they're not even trades. Like I want those names to actually become real positions over the next 5 years, as I think they're very high quality companies who are going to get a discount. So that's what you got on Reddit and Shopify. I know a lot of people here own Reddit. Let me know if people own Shop in the chat. I know Reddit's been one of the ones that has been getting a lot more excitement from people. Now, the advertising budget bear case on Reddit is real. If we get into a recession, that would hurt Meta, AppLove, and all those guys. The thing is, if we get into a recession, everything's screwed, right? So if the only bear case is advertising, budgets getting cut because of recession, then it's like, okay, if that happens, I don't think people are going to be paying 115 times sales for Rocket Lab either if we get into a recession. So if that's your bear case, then that's a bear case for the market, not necessarily a bear case for Reddit. I tried Meta's competitor over the weekend. It's bad. It's like, you don't have to believe me. Download it yourself. See if it actually gives you any level of Reddit type experience. It's just not good. So not too worried about the Meta competitor as well. Oklo right there, up 9.3%. in the pre-market. Why is Oklo up? They got a deal, or they said they are likely going to get a deal from the DOE for advanced talks on using surplus Cold War era plutonium as fuel for advanced nuclear reactors. Again, the SMR thesis is probably 5 to 10 years out, but the street's pricing that in right now. Oklo says the program could help ease fuel supply constraints and bring advanced reactors online sooner. The company would partner with Nuclo, which would contribute fuel expertise and potential project capital subject to agreements and approvals. The energy constraints are very real. Oklo is not a company that's really bringing a lot of energy online yet, but the fact that it has the potential to do so and partner with a bunch of these different hyperscalers when it comes to nuclear energy, I think that's why the street is getting a lot more excitement. Yeah, decent amount of people here own Reddit. Few people own Shop. I know Tanner owns Shop. Tanner has owned Shop for a while, given he is in Canada. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of also, look, I think there needs to be a mix in, it depends on what type of investor you are, but I think it's okay to have a mix of like, hey, here are my growth plays that I'm going for right now because of this edge AI compute thesis, or because of this memory bottleneck, or this photonics ecosystem that I'm getting excited about. And then there's also a mix of the portfolio that could be stuck in safe stocks that are being treated like absolute bottom of the barrel junk names, but are compounding like crazy. Like, you either go full port, super heavy growth, and you're looking for the most alpha, or you say, you know what, I'm going to take a portion of my portfolio and try to allocate to crazy alpha. And maybe Dell at 300 is not crazy alpha anymore, but maybe you bought Dell at 180 and you don't want to sell because you think Dell is going to be 500 by the end of the cycle, and so you keep it there. But or you say, I'm going to trim 50% of my Dell and I'm going to put it into something that's beaten up but that's growing, that the street just doesn't like for whatever reason, and eventually the street will wake up and say, hey, these companies do not deserve to be trading at dirt cheap valuations for exceptional, we're not talking about basic growth, but exceptional levels of growth at the end of the day, if they are growth stocks and not being commoditized by AI. Like if Shopify and Reddit aren't dead because of AI, if ServiceNow is not dead because of AI, and the earnings are growing, then the narrative sucks right now, but that does not mean the valuation sucks. And maybe, some of that allocation comes into these other names. Someone actually made a point about this over the weekend, that the SpaceX, Anthropic, and OpenAI IPO might create so much liquidity because so many people are going to be getting rich off these IPOs that have invested years ago, that, that might increase the potential for that money to go into these beaten up names. Like if you're an institutional investor and you make, $10 billion off SpaceX, maybe you look at a ServiceNow or a Shopify or a Reddit You went in something super high risk years ago when no one liked it. And now you're going into something that's super low risk that no one likes versus YOLOing into a high beta play that, is part of this chip thesis that might keep going up and up and up. I mean, it might end up just being the YOLOing into the high beta play, even with that much amount of money, because that is where all the alpha and the growth is right now. 18% of the S&P 500 is allocated towards chip stocks. And 73% of Bank of America's fund manager survey said they are long chip stocks. So obviously the trade is relatively crowded, and the trade might continue to be crowded. But the point is, maybe more liquidity leads to some money coming into some of these other names. And time will tell to see if that happens. So does that mean buy PayPal? So dumpster diving doesn't mean you literally buy things that are at the the very bottom of the dumpster. The point of that article that I put out is, if you look at the sort of subsections of each stock that I highlighted, it's all about their earnings growth. Like the stocks are down 30 to 40% year to date, but their earnings have been exceptional. PayPal has not had really good earnings growth, right? So if you're looking at stocks that are dead this year, you still have to look at their earnings, and a Reddit, a Shopify, a ServiceNow, incredible earnings. It's just obviously they have not, they've not been able to move as highly as some of the other names that are more rooted into AI. ANET, that's up right now. Arista, you got some of the networking plays getting some more love. That's up 2.8%. The Cisco earnings definitely show that there is a super cycle for networking. Cisco's up a lot year to date. Obviously, that's helping Nokia, ANET, ALAB. That's also been going a bit more green. Look at that. That's up 3.3%. And both of these names, ALAB and Arista, took a pretty ugly dip after earnings. So it's nice to see them once again get more of their love. Navitas, I don't think there's a headline on this one, up another 11%. It was up 11% last night as well. I don't see the headline there. They've had a couple of headlines over the past few weeks. And so you're seeing this one get a bit more exciting right now. What do you think about SoFi? Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. First of all, thank you to everyone who checked out the pod. I thought it was a pretty fun podcast, and it was super cool to give note of the platform. And hopefully we have more CEOs that come on over the coming years into the pod itself. Look, a lot of people are saying, are you buying SoFi? My simple thesis on SoFi after the pod is, if you listen to Noto talk about the stock for 20 minutes, the number one concern that he has is about rate cuts. I don't think SoFi is a buy on its fundamentals. Like, obviously, I think the fundamentals are amazing, but if you actually look at what Noto said, he's not even talking about the fundamentals of the business, right? That when we talked about the stock, he brought up nothing about the fundamentals. He brought up the macroeconomic concerns around if we're going to get rate cuts or if rates will end up being hiked. I think you buy SoFi right here if you think rate cuts are coming. It's just that simple. Like, the fundamentals of the business, quite frankly, don't matter. And it hurts to say that, but the fundamentals of a firm, Coinbase, Robinhood, they don't matter. Because if they mattered, some of these stocks would not be trading at the levels that they're trading at. The market, and I think Noto did a really good job explaining this, is that portfolio managers are coming to their bosses and saying, hey, do we buy a stock that is susceptible to a credit issue in the context of interest rates? And their bosses are saying, well, what are the fundamentals looking like? And the fundamentals are amazing. And then they're saying, okay, well, if the rate cut is the biggest issue, then let's wait until we have a little bit better of a macroeconomic outlook on rates. And right now, given CPI and PPI are where they're at, and the Fed's probabilities are pricing in a hike in January, not a cut for the rest of 2026, it's hard to get excited about a name like that if it's only trading on tangible book, if that's the worst way to value it, as Noto said. But if that is the way that it's being valued, then I don't think you can buy it until you think you're going to get rate cuts. So very simple. I mean, Micron's not going to be affected by rate cuts. It's like Micron's, as long as AI demand continues to be strong, Micron's probably going up. Micron right there, 818 in the pre-market. Again, that price target from UBS is part of the reason why it's up 9% today. SoFi will be very susceptible to rate cuts, good or bad, if we end up getting them. So I think that's the logic on if you buy the stock or not. I do think the $20 leap 2 years out doesn't look crazy. I think in 2 years, if we have rates come down at least 50 basis points, which doesn't seem that wild with Kevin Warsh, SoFi is probably a $20 stock. But obviously right now in the short term, if we don't get rate cuts, then we're going to see how the market ultimately thinks about it. D-Wave, that's down about 0.5%. Microsoft, that is flat. Microsoft, again, the big headline that went under noted on Friday was Microsoft potentially is going to start selling chips to Anthropic. If that's the case, maybe Microsoft gets re-rated. So that's something we're going to have to take a look at. But ultimately, time will tell. And if that deal ends up coming true, maybe Microsoft isn't seen as a software stock anymore. It's seen more of a chip play. And so that's maybe something that gets Microsoft out of the doghouse, given where it was at last week. Tom Lee, in his Granny ETF, he sold all of his oil stocks. He added Oracle, UNH, ServiceNow, and Lilly. So sold all of his energy names and bought software and healthcare, which are his two big bets right now. He is staying away from semis. And, there are a lot of people that are feeling the semiconductor trade is getting a little bit too aggressive. Nonetheless, it continues to go up. And will it top out in the summer for the short term? We will see. But as of now, the market continues to be excited about it. European equities have seen outflows for 6 weeks straight. So you're getting a lot more money coming into the U.S. markets as emerging markets equities also saw 6 weeks of outflows. So emerging market equities and European equities in particular are seeing those outflows. A lot of people are saying, where is the money coming from for these semiconductor stocks? You're seeing it on the screen. People are dumping a lot of their stocks internationally across the world, and they're buying tech stocks and semiconductor names that are, continuing to go up. B of A raised the price target from Apple, 330 to 380. Their argument is that in an agentic world, value accrues to the platform that controls user intent, personal context, and app access. Apple, I think, is expensive. It's expensive for a reason. It trades at a premium for a reason. Their earnings growth is the fastest in 5 years, so I would not be surprised to see Apple completely get re-rated above 300. Also, people just love the stock. They love holding Apple, so it's always going to trade at that premium. But if they nail agentic Siri, maybe that name is trading much closer to 380, which would put it at closer to a $5 trillion market cap, which would also be incredible to see. Zucks just posted that he's taking a page out of the Jocko playbook, doing his Murph challenge in 2026. It's a lot of pull-ups, a lot of push-ups. It doesn't seem like a guy who seems to be too worried about the stock price, even though the stock's been dead. Maybe he's working out to ignore the stock price, or that's his form of escaping the concerns about it. You do have a Bloomberg article this morning saying that Zuck's CapEx expenditures could be the worst thing in history for Meta stock price. So you have a lot of people really questioning why he's spending this much money if he doesn't have a cloud. I think one easy way for Zuck to resolve the concerns about the stock price is very simple. Just start selling compute. And if they can start selling compute, this thing is going to re-rate overnight. They don't want to do that, but that is the ace up his sleeve that I think he's thought about. Maybe it hasn't happened, but if he does end up doing that, then maybe there's a better chance for the market to be excited about Meta. And then finally, here's a chart right here. We are issuing a lot of U.S. equity. We are issuing a lot of U.S. equity. These are IPOs coming online this year along with dilution. So the grayed out part is dilution. The striped part of that chart is IPOs. And you're seeing this is the largest year since 2021 that we have issued U.S. equity. You hear these companies every other day doing secondaries and convertible notes, and then you have all these IPOs coming. You have the largest IPOs in history. So there's a lot of money flowing into the equity markets, and now it's just going to be a question of how much can we sustain that momentum, and if that momentum continues to be backed up by the earnings growth that we have continued to see. All right, here we go. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It was a long weekend. We are back Tuesday, May 26th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. S&P 500, 750. That is up 0.5%, opens at all-time highs. Micron busting through its all-time highs, 10.25% again. They got an upgrade today by UBS to $1,625, which is double the stock price right now. $933 billion. Micron is about 4% away from becoming a $1 trillion company as that opens up green. SoFi, 1673. That is up 7.17%. Again, the idea of oil coming down, helping bond yields, helping inflation expectations, potentially leading to the idea of a rate cut coming this year, probably leading to the market getting a bit more excited about some of these fintech names that are adjacent to rate cuts. Navitas, that's up 5%. It was up 11% pre-market, so that one just got split. Cisco just went red. Arista just got hit, still slightly green. Nope, just went red now. Reddit, 143.50, that's up 1.2. Qualcomm, that was also more green. Now it's slightly red. Salesforce just went red. Dell is up 3%. Palantir is red. ServiceNow is red. IGV is red. Your software names, once again, are red. I think all that money is going into Micron. Micron right there, 833. That's up 11% on the day. Vertiv, that's up 3%. Bloom Energy is up 1%. Not all the semis are running. It's really Micron and AMD, right? AMD, yes, Micron and AMD, I think, are your big winners so far. I know we're really early into the day, but many of your pre-market gainers like Intel. Intel was up 3%. Now it just flipped red, 119. That's pretty incredible. Marvell, that one's moving. I'll put Marvell on that list. Marvell, AMD 487. Are we going for 500 today? Micron 840. Micron now $950 billion market cap. That's up 12%. SanDisk is 1530. SanDisk not moving as much as Micron, but that's still up 3.76%. S&P 500, 749. The rest of the semis, ARM is up 3, Marvell's up 8, TSM's up 1, Qualcomm's up 3. ASML went red, Intel went red, SMCI flat, AMD still moving, NVIDIA, I mean, it's up a little bit, but 217 after those earnings is pretty incredible. That's still up 1%. Where are your space names? Redwire, 13%. Rock Lab, are we at 140? We are at 140. We're holding on by a thread, but it is still indeed 140. ASTS, 114. Space Mob, not slowing down. So your space name's still pretty damn green. Wolf, that should be up. TeraWolf, that's up 11%. Cypher, that is up 8%. That means Nebius and Iren should be up. Nebius just went red. Interesting. Iren is at 60 again. Hasn't been at 60 since the earnings. So nice to see it get a 6% pop right there. I don't see any headline on Iren. And then CoreWeave was up 3%. CoreWeave is now 1.5%. So that one kind of getting faded from the move that it had in the pre-market. Firefly, that should be up. That is indeed up 11%. Again, all your space names continuing to get that bid. AMD 483, Micron 841. Micron hit 845 at one point. Yeah, Ferrari came out with an electric vehicle. Ferrari down 5% right here. I have never heard of a luxury brand coming out with that type of EV. Street obviously did not like what they put out. So Ferrari, that's down 5%. And I haven't looked too much into it, but it seems like Street was not that happy with the presentation of it or the earnings potential of what it could end up becoming. Enphase, that was up 5. Now that's up half. DRAM should be up at least 4%. DRAM is up 9.8%, 57.98. All your memory stocks. Seagate should be up. Seagate's up 2.4%. Western Digital, that is also up 5.6% as well. Porsche has an EV. Okay, well, I'm not a car guy, so I didn't know. But like, you know, I've never heard of like these super luxury brands coming out with EVs. I thought they usually stick to what they've always had, but maybe it's a new era. Maybe it's something that's becoming more normalized. And if that's the case, then, you know, maybe the Street's going to have to be okay with it. Rock Lab 141. Is NVIDIA actually about to go red? Oh my goodness, NVIDIA's about to go red. We are witnessing something that I don't think we've witnessed ever in history. You know, in the dot-com bubble, Cisco was the one that, you know, NVIDIA's compared to Cisco. Cisco was the one that ended up trading at 100 times earnings. In this version of an AI revolution, the money is going to the parts of the GPU over the company selling the GPUs, which in this case ends up being your Microns of the world. It is quite incredible to see, but that's how the market's pricing it. And NVIDIA right there, barely up 80 cents on the day, almost potentially going red. CoreWeave up 2.23%. AMD very close to that 490 range. It hit 489.55, then got rejected, 481. That is up to 2.9% on the day. Shopify, are we red? We are red, 102.43. I expect this and Reddit to be stuck in the doghouse, but hopefully they give us, you know, Reddit I think is going to be hard to ask for 120, but if we get 120 on this, Shopify, if we get closer to 80. Shopify was 75 back in the April tariff sell-off, so it was a while ago, but I mean, if we can get those prices again, I think they would be exceptional prices given the types of growth that they're putting up. Lumentum, that goes red. Akamai, that goes red. Fastly goes red. Epsilera, that's still up a little bit. Adobe, that's down 2%. Robinhood is also slightly up a little bit, 74.78. Again, Bitcoin not really breaking out in the midst of the fact that we are hitting all-time highs on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. Oil's coming down to a low of 3 weeks, and BTC can't get a move. I don't know how to explain it. If someone has an explanation on it, I would love to know. T1 Energy, 14%. That's going green. Again, this is one of Leopold's latest buys and has developed a bit of a retail following for the stock. That's up 14% right there as an energy name. But I can't explain the Bitcoin thesis outside of rate cuts not being contributing or not contributing to liquidity. But at this point, you would think Bitcoin doesn't only need liquidity. given, we're in a massive risk on environment, and it seems like it does. Or the thesis on Bitcoin is just not as exciting to people anymore, which is fair given AR stocks are going up 2% every day. So it might just be a lot of that money's going into AI names versus the crypto names. Oklo, that's up 8.2. That is green. The quantum stocks, D-Wave is down 7. I don't know why that's getting hit. I don't see a headline on that. Rigetti's down 5, IONQ. To be honest, if I had to guess, I would say they're getting sold off for people to buy memory. Now, they went up a lot last week, so it's also probably normal profit taking. But a lot of these names that are going red, maybe space, memory, your picks and shovels, Redwire just hit $20. A lot of them need the money to come from somewhere. And software and quantum for today might be the names that are potentially getting sold off. Or is Cisco still red, PayPal red, and Arista up 1.5%. ASTS, I mean, it's the SpaceX IPO. It's just that simple. I really think I just think the market's getting ready for it. And maybe it's a sell the news when the IPO actually happens. But as of now, ASTS and Rock Lab continue to get a lot of love. A lot of love. LWLG, this was a photonics play. This is down about 4%. This one had a massive run up to 18 a few weeks ago. Same thing with Poet. Poet went to 25. Poet is now down 2%, 1433. Amcor, what's the headline on Amcor? 9%. I mean, there was a headline on Thursday that we looked at, but the market didn't react to it. Almost like it's kind of getting delayed right there. Vivek Ramaswamy's ASST bought $85 million worth of Bitcoin. Strive Asset Management, that's up 2.4%. They bought some more BTC. UNH, is that dumping? UNH is indeed dumping. Not crazy dumping, but down about 1.7%. Yeah, the quantum sell-off is interesting today, given how much momentum that had last week. But then again, I think a lot of these sectors, look at NVIDIA. Oh my goodness, 215, 30 cents away from going red. At least AMD is holding 480. Micron lost 850, but no, it just touched 837, right back to 845. The money's going into this. It's got to be coming from somewhere. Oscar down 4, Lumentum down 1, Inflection down 3, GameStop down, Accelera down, ASTS, Rock Lab, and Micron and Marvell kind of taking the cake today for the part of their momentum. Why is Palantir down? Palantir sells something called software. And in this stock market, you're not really allowed to sell software if you want your stock to go higher. So that is why Palantir is down. ServiceNow, same rate. Wow, 98. If you're signing up to buy a software name, you just have to be ready to deal with this. And quite frankly, you can't even complain about it. You got to tell yourself that I am buying something that is super discounted for what could be idiotic reasons, and that over time I will be rewarded. But in the short term, it is the picks and shovels that are getting all the momentum. And again, that's what I'm saying. If you're struggling with this, it's like, okay, buy some of the picks and shovels and then buy some of the safety stuff. If you go all in on the picks and shovels, you just have to be able to stomach the volatility. And if you go all in on the safe stuff, then you have to stomach not having any volatility to the upside. And so a mixture of both, I don't think is that crazy. Nokia 1604, this broke 16 again, did a Substack article on that last week, so people can read that. I do not think Nokia at 16 is an attractive entry price. I'm just going to be honest. I think this needs to dip back to the 13s, which I don't know if that happens. But again, this is the kind of struggle with this AI semiconductor rally. You wait for a dip. Micron gave you 650 last week, so there was an opportunity. But then you have to buy the opportunity if you think that's your opportunity. Nokia might give us 13 again if that opportunity comes around, or it might just run up to 20, just like Micron might just run from here to 1,000. So you really have to ask yourself, how comfortable are you in DCAing and buying the rip versus waiting for a dip? And the dip has happened over the past 5 days for a lot of these names. They gave opportunities. Even Nokia was almost below 13. But then when the dip gets reversed, it's a violent reversal. Same thing with Nebius, right? Gave a dip at 185 and then violently went right back up to 220, which is kind of in the nature of this market. Rocket Lab, are we going higher? Rocket Lab, wow, 144.70, all-time highs for Rocket Lab. Shout out to Matt Money, dude. Shout out to Matt freaking Money. Unbelievable. BlackBerry, this was up last night. This is up a little bit now. It's up 2%. It was pushing $9 last night. Now $8.13. Momentum looks really good for BlackBerry. I don't own it, but I did trade this last week. But momentum looks very strong. Call volume looks strong as well. So would not, and the valuation is $4 billion market cap. Would not surprise me if this thing has that market cap go up a bit higher. So that even if it's more of a speculative trade, that's one of those momentum plays that could continue doing well. But could this thing be down to $6 in a day? Yeah, given how pegged it is to the overall AI semiconductor trade right now. Nebius 217, Rock Lab 144.08. We did not hit 145 yet. Lunar, I traded Lunar a lot back in February, like a lot. Like when it was 17.18, I traded it so many times. And I was looking at my history last night. I was like, oh my goodness, all these shares sold for a few pennies, $43. Thankfully, we kept the Rock Lab, but I didn't even understand what Lunar did. I was trading it as like a space proxy. Like I still don't fully understand this business, but obviously all the space names have been totally re-rated. Same thing with Redwire. Same thing with Satellogic, right? Which is why you're seeing so much of a massive move on them. Amcor 72, that's up 9.6. OUST, LiDAR for robotics. This is up another 12%. This one's made a massive move since their earnings at 24, and they kind of got sold off on the earnings, and now they've kind of reversed. But this one has been seen as a broader robotics play. Micron 852, 854. That is all-time highs. Cerebras, are we dumping? Cerebras, wow. They told retail to buy it at 350. 239. I really hope this doesn't happen to SpaceX. I think the Elon premium is going to make sure this type of a 385 to 240 decline won't easily happen. And everyone's like, well, it's still above the listing price at 185. It's like, okay, but no one got access to it at 185 unless you're an institutional investor. Very few retail investors got it at 185. Like I would argue less than 1% of retail investors, and if they did, they got a couple of shares. So people had to buy it at higher prices, and obviously they got dumped on. I don't think that happens to SpaceX as easily, given you got a lot of people that are just not willing to sell it. But that is kind of the fear with some of these IPOs that are coming out right now. Nebius just went red. Yeah, Brad Gerstner. Brad Gerstner has pumped IPOs. I mean, it's very similar to 2021. He pumped Snowflake. That one didn't. It's still below its IPO prices at 250. So I love Brad. I think he's super smart, but I mean, the dude wants to make money at the end. He's self-motivated, and he has a lot of LPs he has to worry about. They made that investment early on. They needed to pump to be able to get a good return. They need to find liquidity. This market is about finding liquidity, and that's the part that scares me about this market is that liquidity is coming. I mean, Kyle Kuzma, who's a respectable basketball player, has started tweeting about stocks in the past 24 hours. Not the past 24 days, not the past 24 months, the past 24 hours. Every single tweet he's putting out is about the stock market. And that stuff's just a little concerning. It's like, when did this guy become an expert on quantum computing or data center capex as Intel turns green? And so some of that stuff is like, okay, how is this excitement around the market coming through to a lot of different people? And, is that sustainable long-term? ServiceNow back to 100. AMD, 488. It's trying to go back for 489. Let's see if we can break through 490. ASTS up 12%. Shout out to Erwin. He told me to look at this at 86. Had to hold it into the 65s after that Blue Origin launch didn't work out. And she's back. 120, 13% on the day. Just an incredible run on ASTS. Rock Lab as well. Trying to get up to 145, 144.79 is what it got to. Why is it concerning? It's not concerning because he's a basketball player. It's concerning because someone who doesn't care about the stock market, has never shown any indication about caring about the stock market, now is caring about the stock market, which begs the question, is he being influenced by this? Is he working with someone? Does he have a product coming out? Like, you don't just have people randomly get excited about PE ratios, which is what he's tweeting about. It's just the classic behavior of what happens when there's a euphoric market. Everyone starts talking about the same thing. And it's not to say that the market's going to be toppy, but it is to say, like, it's a little concerning. And we saw this in October 2025 when we topped out for 5 months. You had random people just talking about stocks and crypto, and Kanye West launched a meme coin. And these things aren't always great to see in the midst of a massive bull run. NVIDIA right there, 216. Shopify goes green. Reddit potentially going below 140 and 40 cents right there Firefly still up 15%. Wow, Micron, 858. It is $30 billion away from becoming a $1 trillion company. And more importantly, it might be normalizing in the 800s because it was, kind of stuck below the 800s for the past 2 weeks right here. 860 up 14%. Micron, ASTS, and Rocket Lab and Marvell are your big winners for today. Broadcom is cheap. It's cheaper than AMD for sure. So it makes sense that Broadcom's getting a pump right here. Everything besides NVIDIA getting the pump. But Broadcom's forward PE is 28. So if AMD is going to pump like this, you would imagine Broadcom gets a little bit of a sympathy pump as well. No headline on Broadcom, but they should be getting a bigger move than being stuck in the low 400s. It was at 406 this morning, 427 right here. AMD 490. Let me check the resistance at 500, which would put AMD at what? Yeah, dude, Micron is a higher market cap than AMD. Yeah. AMD is at 800. Micron's at 950. AMD at 500. The wall is it's not that bad. 77,000 shares. 77,000 shares. Poet, that stock is down 9%. That one getting hit, likely because Lumentum is getting hit, but Lumentum's not down that much. Lumentum down 1.79. Broadcom again up 3.5. The space stock still moving. Ondas, which had a massive move last week, then gave it up. It got to 1150, came back down, now up 6.3%, 963 for Ondas. Philadelphia Semiconductor Index reaches all-time highs. That means SMH should also be at all-time highs. There it is, SMH almost 600. Look at that chart. It was $11 in 2012, 600 in 2026. It was 200 in March of 2025. It was 400 in March of 2026. It's been a year for the semis. It's been a year for the semis. Either you're all in on the semis, or you have some exposure to the semis, or you have no exposure to the semis. I think the majority of us have some exposure to the semis. And then it's a sliding scale on how much, how deep does that exposure go? And I think very few institutional investors and retail have minimal exposure to the semis. I mean, if you've completely isolated yourself from the semis, that's fine, but it's kind of hard given if you own the S&P, 18 cents on every dollar is the semis. So that is the story for this year. NVIDIA right there, 216.98 as that continues to go green. App also getting a bit of a bid right here. I'm joining you in shop. I need some diversification from semis going into later this year and next year. Yeah, I just think it's a very high quality company. Like the big barometer for Shop and Reddit to me are they high quality companies? And will they be commoditized by AI? If the answer to that is no, if the earnings growth is exceptional and it's just the stocks that are down, then that is enough of a reason to be a bit more excited. UNH getting hit 2.4, Palantir getting hit 1.5, ServiceNow down 1.5. Shop is expensive. I agree. But it's just, you don't really get meaningful discounts on Shopify. Same thing with CrowdStrike. I mean, CrowdStrike even at 430 was freaking expensive, especially because they're not even accelerating CrowdStrike better accelerate ARR going into this quarter, because it's been almost 2 years of like 20%, 22%, which is just not massive growth to justify their numbers. Shopify is putting up massive growth, and maybe their numbers are still a bit extended when it comes to valuation. But the point is, CrowdStrike's up almost double from the lows in March, even though it was expensive in March. If you looked at pure valuation, I think that could happen to Shopify as long as the growth doesn't slow down. And if you look at their numbers from Q1, the growth is not slowing down. Also, it's a founder-run business, Shopify and Reddit. And that's another thing I really love. You have two founders that actually give a shit about the company that are running it, which is important. Robinhood right there, 74.53, as that's still up 1.2. Walmart got hit pretty bad last week. JP Morgan came out and they said we remain overweight on Walmart. Their basic argument here was that there were a few sectors that experienced deflation, which is why Walmart missed on some of their earnings, which is kind of hilarious. And so although Walmart said they're raising prices, and that's like concerns around the consumer, JP Morgan said Walmart's first quarter was hit by 200 basis points of drug and egg deflation, but traffic growth accelerated, and their digital business is now running at a 12% variable margin. So they said outside of 2 items that went down in price, which hurt their margins in the short term, the stock continues to be a buy. Redwire, 25%. As that one is, I think it's squeezing. I think it is squeezing. ASTS, I think that's also squeezy peasy. The short float on ASTS is 20%. The short float on Redwire is 15%. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Momentous Space. I don't know this company, MNTS, but this is up 100%. Has anyone ever heard of this company? I have no idea. I've never heard of this in the space race. Their market cap is 130 million, which means before the run, it was 70 million. But they have space in their name. So I would imagine that's what's helping them. Over the past 5, oh my goodness, dude. What is this stock? They are down 99.9% in the past 5 years. The stock used to trade at a whopping $162,000 a share. You can't even see the 2026 pump based on this chart. And now it's up. Okay, someone had to pump this. That's unless there's a headline, someone had to pump this. Someone had to, a $70 million market cap, someone had to pump it. I'm sorry. Someone had to publicly tell people to buy this thing for it to pump. There's no way a stock down 99.9% over the past 5 years is getting a 135% move randomly in a day. There's just no way. Zip Trader. Well, okay, there you go. I mean, if you have a YouTuber with, how many subscribers does this guy have? 870,000 subscribers. Oh my goodness. 150,000 views on this video. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That'll do it for you. Now, is there an actual thesis here? Maybe there's a real thesis here, but Voyager, that one's also making a move right there. Another space name, Voyager, that's up 10%. And guys, that's why I don't talk about sub $100 million companies. Like, yes, it's up 100% the next day, but there's something called the SEC that likes to talk to people who pump very, very small names and has every right to potentially go through your brokerage statements and see if you sold into that pump, because these are names you just got to be a little careful with, especially if you have a big audience. You got to be a little careful with some of these smaller names, but there you go. That is up 97% on the day as that one is making the move. ASTS, that's up 14% as well. That feels kind of toppy. I agree with you. I'm not going to lie. When random $70 million companies that have space in the name start pumping 100% in a day, like, it was down 99.9% for a reason. I don't even know what the company does, but it was down 99.9%. There had to be something that was wrong with the company. Not to say they can't turn around, and make progress and change the bit. Like, that's always possible. But if the pump is because of an influencer, then we just have to be a little cautious of why. CoreWeave, that's up 2%. IREN, that's up 4%. And then Reddit, that one's slightly flipping green. Bitcoin still at 77,000 as well. With this SEC, Trump is probably long. Dude, Trump probably watched Zip Trader's video last night and told his advisors, hey guys, look, 70 million, we should buy some. So you're probably right. You're probably right. That might be happening. Intel 124. As that's still green. Wow. Okay, is anyone selling ASTS or Rocket Lab? Let's put that in the chat. I'm not selling my ASTS, but it's significantly smaller than my Rocket Lab position. The 1,000 shares I bought of Rocket Lab in April or in March, the goal was to sell those on a rip, and it just kept ripping. And so I think I'm going to have to sell them into the SpaceX IPO. I don't want to be that overweight. But then again, this is like, is anyone trimming these names at all? Or are we just letting the space theme run out until the SpaceX IPO? Or Like I did not think space would be the best buy during the dip. And obviously the semis have been the best buy along with space so far. Whatever, Lunar, Redwire, whatever space name you bought, Saidu space and semis were the dip buys in April. And obviously if we had a crystal ball and knew that, then I think all of us would have bought a lot more space and semis, but those were the buys. Firefly, this thing was at $18 in March, 57 now. I mean, just massive, massive moves. DRAM right there up 11%. Seeing a few people say they sold calls. Laura said I sold 38 shares, trimmed a little bit of Rocket Lab. A little bit. Tess says letting go of my space fly. Austin says I sold all my Rocket Lab. It was a 2% weighting. Austin, you entered recently too, so that's a pretty big move you got in a short period of time. NVIDIA just went red as AMD hits all-time highs. Absolutely incredible. Fun Extreme says I sold 50% of my Rocket Lab position last week, $58 average. I cannot blame you. I mean, the move that has happened so quickly. Now, here's the question. Is Rocket Lab the new Palantir? Because if it is, I mean, you know, this might be one of those stories where, when I mean new Palantir, I mean in terms of price action, right? It's reminding me a lot of 2025 and late 2024, where it just kept going up and the sellers just, I mean, even Peter Thiel, when Palantir got to 40, sold $1 billion worth of Palantir. That $1 billion of Palantir at $40 was gladly bought up by the market as it went on to go to 150. So I wonder how much the space momentum, I do think if space falls, it all falls together. And I think if space pumps, it all pumps together. So I think right now, at this point, it is purely rooted in the narrative around space. And the SpaceX IPO has to go really well. If it doesn't go well, Rocket Lab and ASTS, I think, are coming down pretty hard. But given what I'm seeing around the demand cycle for the shares on SpaceX, it looks like it's going to have a relatively decent IPO. Look at Intel, 125, getting back to levels it hasn't seen in 2 weeks. Intel up 5% right there as that continues to go green. Uzi says Rocket Lab is now 20% of my portfolio. Wow. Yeah, this one has helped out a lot this year in terms of really providing some higher alpha outside of the semis. Take-Two, they had a good earnings. I don't know why this thing tanked, but obviously the street didn't like Grand Theft Auto coming out. So says it's not selling, hasn't reached my number. Erwin says I'm selling some aggressive covered calls. I mean, look, I don't think Rocket Lab's undervalued here per se. I think long term it's going to be much higher than what it is today, but short term. Now here's the thing: Peter Beck shows up with profitability in Q2. He's only 3 cents away. He shows up with GAAP net income. I don't know if that's possible, but they're only 3 cents away. I mean, I think the street starts to get really excited. And so maybe that's part of the reason why it's been re-rated outside of the SpaceX IPO. The street just thinks the fundamentals, especially on a GAAP basis, are more likely to occur. And, you know, that could be one of the broader catalysts. Obviously, Neutron continues to be a massive catalyst. The Andro partnership was amazing. Raytheon partnership was strong. I mean, just everything you could ask going for it is going in the right direction. Oh, yeah, S&P, I forgot. That's more of a 2027 story. Well, maybe 2028. They would need to be profitable by Q3 of this year to be eligible by December 2027 for the S&P, because you need about 4 quarters of profitability. Ford, by the way, up 2%. So you're looking at early 2028, but if they can get profitability done sooner than later than 2027, I mean, if the street's going to let SpaceX get into the S&P, I think they'd be happy to let Rocket Lab get in there if it matches the qualifications. Now, if you are SpaceX, you don't need to be profitable to get into the S&P or the NASDAQ. Because you have certain privileges, but still, I think the street would be excited about it. AppLovin, 10% move. No headline on AppLovin outside of maybe the market waking up and saying it shouldn't be this cheap. Consumer confidence we got today, 93.1 versus 92. 93.1 versus 92. Wow, Redwire. Redwire is actually getting squeezed. Redwire is legit getting squeezed right here. And they diluted the other day. Market didn't care. Same thing with Rocket Lab. They diluted by $3 billion at freaking 130. And the market did not care. I mean, the level of risk appetite for these space names it's quite frankly unbelievable, but it also is believable if you've got this IPO in the same sector that is going to be the biggest IPO in human history, which is SpaceX at $2 trillion. Marvell right there at 212. Here's the update on consumer confidence that we just got.
93.1 is the headline, much better than the 92 expected, and the positive revision in the rearview mirror, which pushed up 92.8 up to 93.8, which means that even though 93.1, the current read, is better than expected, it is now a little bit less than our last month at 93.8. That's the highest read of the year, the revision last month. And if we look at the present situation, exactly the opposite. A little bit light here at 121.2. That would be the lightest since Feb of this year when it was 118 and change. And finally, on expectations, very strong. 74.4. That would be the new high water mark of the year. So that takes us to D's of last year, and also a positive revision from last month, 72.2 to 73.4. All three metrics here, Carl, had positive revisions from last month, and that is a good thing as confidence levels seem to rebound and now are maybe correlating a little bit more to the level of equities, which is historically where it's always kind of correlated. Ultimately, what's going on at the gas pump, of course, taking a little confidence away from many Americans. Interest rates, they're falling rather dramatically following oil, even though oil is pushing up a little bit here at 406 in a 10-year, or in a 2-year, we're down 6, half dozen basis points, and a bit under 4.5% for a 10, down 7 basis points. Sarah, back to you.
Okay, so consumer confidence, not that bad. I don't think it matters too much. I don't know if it's going to be affecting the broader market. The expectations came in at 74 versus 72, which is also pretty good. S&P, are we still holding 750? We are holding 750.9. NVIDIA is indeed red. AMD is really trying for 500. Micron down from 862 to 850, still up 13% on the day. Nokia just below 16. EOSC and T1 Energy getting the bid today. In terms of names, wow, T1 24%. You had a couple of short reports come out on it last week that ended up, well, if they're still short, they're getting squeezed right there. VG, that's down 4%. Oklo, that's up 6. Zeta, that's up 3. And then Tesla, 429. The Googs, are we past 390? We are at 387, 1.1 on Mr. Google. So it looks like consumer confidence is decent if CPI and PPI, which it'll take about 2 months for that to really come down, comes down based on oil coming down. Where is oil? We were at 93 in the morning. We are at 94. Interesting. Yeah, we need this thing to not get back to 100, but we really need it to get back to 80. And I think Trump wants to see that happen going into July 4th. But we got to see if we actually have the juice to get it down there. Wow. ASTS 123, SPY 751. 751. Yeah, UBS raised their Micron price target to 1625. I think the Micron price target from UBS actually makes sense, to be honest. If they agree that the LTAs, the long-term agreements with the hyperscalers, are locked in at these prices, you can assume Micron's going to be doing $100 of EPS by 2029. If that is the case, you put a 15 multiple on that. Okay, you get to $1,500, right? Like that's a double from here. Having said that, if in 2030, 2031, 2032, that $100 of EPS goes down to like, I don't know, $30, $40 of EPS, maybe less than that, if it really is super cyclical after the next 3 years, I wonder how quickly that gets priced in. I think that's part of the reason it's not trading at $1,600. But the idea that it maintains this types of earnings growth for the next 3 years, if you discount that back to today and put a reasonable multiple on it, I mean, yeah, you get a higher stock price. So it's not that crazy to imagine that. It's just, again, I think the market is afraid that once the memory orders dry up, from the hyperscalers, where is Micron's growth going to be coming from? And maybe Micron over the coming years can start to diversify the business away from just selling HBM, which leads to that lack of cyclicality, which is what NVIDIA has been doing so nicely over the past few years outside of just selling GPUs. But in the short term, this thing's probably going up. I mean, it's just hard when you're putting up that type of earnings growth to not get a re-rating of the multiple. Shopify almost 105. App Loving up 9.4%. Kyle Kuzma did say yesterday that he likes App Loving. So maybe it's pumping because of Kyle Kuzma. Maybe that is the reason. Why does Nebius dump every day at the open? I do not know, but it also recovers either intraday or by the end of the week. So even with the dump, now remember Nebius is trading at all-time highs. So it's one of those things where you probably have profit takers every morning coming in on this. Nokia passing 16, ServiceNow back above 101, bottomed at 98 today. Palantir also trying to flip green as well. IGV did flip from red to green. It's because of the Meta headline. But what is the Meta headline? Is there a Meta headline on App Lovin'? Let's see. Meta App Lovin'. Silver's flat. Gold is also slightly down. Oh, App Lovin' may face reduced near-term pressure from Meta competition. Wow. That's enough of that. This is why the stock market's stupid, bro. That headline is enough to add $2 billion of market cap today to App Lovin'. I mean, it works the same on the downside, right? The same headline about how Meta is more competitive with App Lovin' is enough for it to lose $2 billion. I mean, I guess that's how the market works on many different headlines. Ford right there, 15. As that continues to flip green. Firefly up 20%. All right, okay, so here's a different question around space. Who is hedging their space? Potentially buying puts on the space ETFs or on these, because again, the way they're pumping, there's either going to be does this continue? Is space completely re-rated to the point where Lunar and Firefly and Rocket Lab ASA, they all just trade at an elevated multiple? We're not talking about a small elevation in the multiple. We're talking about a really big elevation in the multiple. Or do they top out on a specific reason and they all fall down, which is kind of what happened last Tuesday before they recovered? I feel like having some protection there is not that crazy. The easiest protection is obviously just taking some profits, but I mean, this momentous thing, that is enough to show me that this is like a real rally fueled by a lot of excitement and momentum. And either it's a meaningful re-rating or it's not. 30 in Aweka says, I'm just writing covered calls on my Rocket Lab. Space is kind of a halo trade, though. That's actually true. Space is kind of a halo trade. AI is not replacing what a lot of these space companies do that easily. If anything, AI is a tailwind for them, especially when it comes to satellite infrastructure. So it is kind of one of your perfect halo trades. And it's again, part of a really important thematic. A pullback on space is inevitable, says Chels. See, and every time they've had a pullback over the past 2 weeks, the dip got, like Rocket Lab fell to 115, the dip got bought instantly, So the fun thing is, if they do fall 10, 15%, they're still trading at pretty high levels from where they were. Shopify 104, CrowdStrike 667. Could Claude come out with a replacement? Bro, if Claude comes out with AI satellites or something, that would be kind of crazy. VIX is up 0.5%. So the VIX not really moving that aggressively. Tesla 428. Where is HIMS? HIMS also 3% move. A little bit of love right there. We are replacing rockets with our software. Yeah, that's what Claude needs to say at this point. There have been some reports over the weekend of people being upset at Anthropic for a variety of reasons. The number one reason being the cost of tokens that we talked about earlier in the show, just becoming a bit excessive. And it's not really Anthropic's fault. It's more so speaking to the compute constraints that exist. But, nonetheless, people are still paying for it. And it's not like they're slowing down anytime soon. The Goldman Sachs CEO said, he wrote an article, opinion piece. He said, I'm the CEO of Goldman Sachs. The AI job apocalypse is overblown. So you've got the CEOs telling us to not worry too much about AI replacing jobs. You look at the data, and every other day there's a new, Intuit, Coinbase, Amazon, Meta. You have a new company, Square, saying, hey, we need to take a second look at all the jobs that we have. So time will tell if the job growth actually is going to be there, but as of now, you're not seeing it. Also, take a look at this. I thought this chart was incredible. The tech sector PE, the forward PE, is below the 5-year average. 5-year average is 25.7. Right now, we're at 23.9. Why? Because the earnings projections for the forward earnings growth over the coming years continues to go up. Like, it really is the greatest bull market of all time. I mean, this is just one of those things where in 2000, you did not have earnings growth accelerate repeatedly at the level that it's accelerating right now. And so could something stop the bull market? Of course, there's a billion different bear cases. But when you talk about a pure intrinsic reason for stocks to go higher, the number one thing that you can go to outside of the money supply increasing, which is a different conspiracy to go down the rabbit hole on, is earnings growth. Like, if a company is earning more dollars, at a faster pace, I'm willing to pay a higher premium to buy that company. And ironically, if the stock doesn't move that much, the premium that I'm paying is actually compressing. Which is why I think the bears are Michael Burry came out with a new post last night, and he said, dude, Michael Burry did an analysis of the volume profile on NVIDIA. He went back to like 1999 and looked at all the times NVIDIA crashed by 50%. And he made this chart, and he was like, if you look at the volume profile between 2026 and 2021 in the crypto mining and then the DeepSeek crash and then in the early 2000s, the volume profile looks the same. Talk about astrology. And because of that, NVIDIA is probably going to fall 50%. And I'm reading this last night. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, he's using volume profiles, not for a intraday trade, not for a 1-month swing, but to make a prediction that NVIDIA, which is already the world's largest company, which I think the reason it's not going up that much is because it's hard to get more people to buy it. But that doesn't mean it has to fall by 50%. He's saying that it will lose $2.5 trillion of market cap because of its volume profile looking similar to the volume profile in 2021. I mean, that is the level of, in my opinion, desperation that the bears are going after to try to come up with a reason for why this bull market needs to be stopped. And I think there's plenty of other reasons you could make the point for why the bull market needs to take a breather. But I mean, now you're just getting, random analysis, and it's obviously not really coming into fruition right now. NVIDIA 216, as that continues to slightly flip green. Amcor, again, don't see the headline on this, but this is moving today. Wow, 14%. I mean, technically, Amcor is getting right back to where it was a month ago after the Intel earnings. So maybe it's just going back to where it was, but nonetheless, that is a pretty big move right there. Zeta, is that getting some love? That is getting some love. Wow, that's the highest it's been since earnings. Let's see if that can continue. SoFi, are we still at 16? We are still at 16.23 on Mr. SoFi. When is the stock draft over? The stock draft is over June 16th. However, we might be doing the stock draft 2.0 next Monday. I got to talk with the rest of the guys about it, but Steve was thinking Steve was proposing let's just do it on June 1st and get it over with instead of waiting until the middle of June, because it's like we'll start on the first day of the month. And we might have some new rules this time. So we're going to talk about it tonight with the guys and see what we do. But maybe in a week, we'll have stock draft 2.0. In terms of who won the stock draft this year, it's obviously going to be Matt. 73% for Mr. Matt Money, 4X on Rocket Lab, 2X on ASTS, 60% for myself with the 70% drawdown on Duolingo. So obviously the ones that won ended up really winning to help the portfolio compound at 60%, even with a real big stinker right there. So likely going to be in second place. Steve's at 50%. If Micron goes to like 1,000 in the next 15 days, Steve might end up being in second place, quite frankly. So Steve right there, 49%. He has a lot of losers. He just had a lot of bad picks, but it doesn't matter when you get a 6X on one of those stocks, which is incredible. And it speaks to portfolio management and how you don't always need to be right. And most of the time, people are going to be wrong on most stuff, except one or two names that end up milking the portfolio. Tanner at 11. Tanner just got hit with Trade Desk and Mercado Libre. App11 was down for him pretty pretty heavily until it turned around. So AppLovin also really good. And then you had Coinbase. So 3 of those names that got hit. And then Chris, 30%. Biggest winners here were Google and Marvell. And then even Cisco at 80%. So still not too bad. You should allow a swap out once a month. We are thinking of doing like quarterly rebalances, like people do with their 13Fs. So we're trying to come up with a set of rules that makes it really easy to follow and also makes it reasonable. Like, if your stock goes up 2x and you want to sell it, in the first quarter of the year, that should be something you're able to do, right? But we got to kind of figure out the rules of how to do it. So we'll come up with something like that. Going into next year, Micron 863 just hit all-time highs again, 971 billion. As that continues to go greeny green. ServiceNow about to go green. ServiceNow 101.98. That is about to go green. Nebius, is that still green? Nebius is red, but it's about to go green. We got a Bloomberg article on XAI. Employees at Elon Musk's XAI were warned by the company's top lawyer to carefully moderate their interactions with workers from Cursor, a directive that came weeks after Musk's firm announced a possible deal. The general counsel sent guidelines to the company's personnel last week, stressing that contact with Cursor staff should not extend beyond what is necessary to implement a technical partnership. That's weird. Musk's XAI warned staffers to limit contact with Cursor employees. Interesting. If they're getting acquired, they're technically SpaceX employees, so that is a little weird. Iran's foreign ministry condemned recent U.S. strikes in the southern Strait of Hormuz province as a gross violation of the ceasefire. Quote, the United States committed a gross violation of the ceasefire in the Hormuz region over the past 48 hours, the ministry said, calling the attacks aggressive and unjustified. The street still not really taking it seriously. Qualcomm up 4% as the semis continue to pump. Continue to make a move. Where is Duolingo? Is that above 100? It is above 100, 108. See, like some of the beat up names, like a Duolingo, the earnings aren't compounding and the narrative is horrible. So it's like, I don't think you could just buy a basket of them and just assume that, oh, they're down 50%, they're going to have to go up. But a Reddit, a Shopify, a ServiceNow, like these names have been destroyed and their earnings are exceptional. CEOs are buying stock, the company is buying back stock, and they're accelerating growth. Like growth solves a lot of concerns, and they're bringing that growth. They're not on the right theme, but they're bringing the growth, and so I think being a little bit selective with them is not too crazy. NVIDIA right there, 216.20, as that is green. Sachin is bullish on Klarna. Sachin's been invested in Klarna since like 2020, so he's been in this name for a while. I would imagine he was in there privately. I actually talked to him over the weekend. He might be at the Singapore meetup. He might be at the Singapore meetup, so hopefully he's there. It would be super cool to see him. But yeah, he's been in Klarna for a minute. 17 right there. What's your thesis on Reddit? I wrote a little bit on Twitter. I will link the Substack. I did on Reddit back at 2:30. I stayed away from it at 2:30 in the deep dive because of valuation. I think the valuation concerns on Reddit are solved. I do not think valuation is an issue on Reddit at all. You can give me some other issues, but it's not valuation. It's just not. At 2:30, but it's been 3 quarters since then. The growth has only increased dramatically, and the stock has gone down by 50%. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but it definitely looks like a easier way to stomach the buy. SoFi 16, Micron, new all-time high again. 865. 865 Dolores for Micron. Mike, and thanks for the super chat. Shout out to Cactus. I have him live on another device. I love the constant news updates. 10,000 of you have joined Cactus Jack. I think if you haven't signed up, you should sign up. It is legit. The feedback I've been getting is crazy. It is the best news terminal that's out there. I really do think it is. The diversity and the speed of updates. If you had it over the weekend, you were up to date on everything going on with the Iran negotiations. It's legit. It's legit shit. So sign up. It's free. You can pay per month if you want to support. But if not, still totally free. and I think you guys will enjoy it. MUU should be going up like crazy. This is double leverage Micron. Yeah, that's up 30%. This was below almost 400 last week. So you talk about massive volatile moves. You are seeing that in some of these double leverage funds. By the way, did you guys hear about this story around the South Koreans and the leveraged funds? Yeah, okay. So South Korea is now forcing retail investors to take a mandatory 2-hour online training and pass a test to be able to qualify for their brokerage accounts to buy leveraged ETFs. Because the leveraged ETF excitement has been so strong in South Korea, particularly because of Samsung and SK Hynix, like the South Korean financial regulators, I guess you could say the FINRA or SEC of South Korea, is now forcing people to take a test so that they understand the risks they're getting into. To buy, I mean, imagine if you to buy like SOXL in the United States, which is 3x levered semis, or NVDL, 2x leveraged NVIDIAs, you would have to take a test that the SEC administers to you, and they tell your Schwab brokerage account, oh, this person's now allowed to buy this. Like, it would be crazy, right? It would be absolutely crazy. That's what's happening in South Korea. And so I think it's kind of hilarious, the level of excitement and momentum that's there, but it also speaks to how much liquidity is being thrown into these stocks. Micron right there, 867, continuing to hit all-time highs. BTC, 77,655. It's actually a great idea. So I understand that perspective, but I also would hate to have to take a test to buy a stock. Like, it just feels demeaning, you know? Granted, probably is smart in general so that people know the risk there, but it also just feels like, you know, I don't know if a lot of people would be happy about that. It's just, I think the South Korean regulators are realizing that there is so much leverage that if they don't have some level of restriction, they can't stop people from buying the stocks, right? You can't literally stop them from doing it. That if they don't have something to potentially temper it, or at least let people know what they're getting into, then, you know, things get really ugly. But if SK Hynix and Samsung keep growing earnings, then kind of doesn't matter, right? I mean, look at EWI, almost $200, 9% up, the South Korean ETF. This was at 180 last week. It's up 20% in a week. I mean, Micron 871. At this point, it is a fundamental re-rating on this overall story. The Qs 730. Wow. Goldman Sachs, CapEx growth is going to be resilient despite oil prices. The bank sees continued strength from AI-driven infrastructure spending and tax incentives, offsetting tariff and manufacturing headwinds, with GDP growth projected at 2.1%. MasterCard CEO, we are seeing solid spending trends similar to Q1 continuing into May. That's actually really good because it pushes back against the narrative that the consumer is weakening. The MasterCard CEO is actually live right now. Let's listen to him, which would really help make sure this economy is not as bifurcated between AI and every other consumer.
Going through the Middle East, from Europe to Asia, from the US to Asia, and so forth. So obviously that has seen some impact since February. But otherwise, spending in markets, because people are still living there, they're still spending on everyday life. In and outbound travel is affected somewhat, but overall, it comes back to the overall trend is still solid.
I wonder how you're thinking about AI and deploying AI. You know, so much of what we hear on consumer is the future is agentic commerce.
Right.
How do you win in a world like that, and what does that actually look like?
Yeah. So, big word, paradigm shift. I think that's what's going on. People are starting to look for different shopping experiences. Imagine you're in your favorite chatbot, and you're going to ask a very complicated question. I need these 10 things for this trip. And the chatbot suggests here's the 10 best things you can possibly buy. They're all from 10 different companies, different websites, and so forth. Wouldn't it be great if you can check out right there, right then? That is what agentic commerce will mean for consumers. A better checkout experience and generally better quality suggestions on what you might want to.
And, you know, likely that means the e-commerce players, Shopify, Squarespace, all of them that control the back end. I wouldn't imagine are commoditized by the bots. They're just going to be getting more traffic from the bots. Micron 875, folks. I think it wants to go to $1 trillion. I think it wants to go to $1 trillion today. 17%. Bitcoin's back to 78,000 or close to it. CA3, thank you for the super chat. I'm a South Korean degen here, but I only invest in the US and I stay away from leverage. Well, you have done pretty well. Even investing in the US, and obviously your country has done really well. I actually saw an Instagram reel the other day of someone in South Korea. It's like a 50-year-old man who was just talking about how everyone is comparing themselves to other people. And it's like, my neighbor's up 150%, my cousin's up 120%. And the guy was like, I'm only up 30% and I feel like shit. But like the point of his video was trying to remind people like, hey, like it's okay. You're up 30%. That's still amazing. But just the level of gains you're seeing across the country, especially with leverage, it's leading to a lot of people to get more excited about their country stock market. AMD 493.35. That continues to go green. ServiceNow just flipped green. Micron is $10 billion away from becoming a $1 trillion company, which would be 300 billion more than, or 200 billion more than AMD at 804 billion. AMD 493. I mean, again, Lisa Su is trying to get to $20 of EPS. Micron's gonna definitively get to more than $100 of EPS this year. And so that right there is the valuation re-rating story on these two names. Qualcomm 243, Coinbase 186, Microsoft 419, MicroStrategy 167, Oracle 195. Yes, SanDisk as well, 1605. That's up 8.3% right there. Taking on leverage at all-time highs is about the dumbest thing you can do. You know, the thing is, people have been saying that for the past 2 years because we've been at all-time highs for the past 2 years. Is this time different? Is taking on leverage when Micron's approaching $1 trillion and, you know, AMD is approaching 800 billion and South Korea ETF is up 200% in a year? Like, is this time different where the leverage now actually bites you really badly? I don't know. I mean, historically, yeah, it's not the smartest thing to do. But for some people, if they see the gains continue to go up and they continue to leverage up, I mean, that it's not going to stop them from thinking this time is different. And quite frankly, so far they've been right. And so I don't know how the story plays out. I know that fundamentally the earnings growth makes sense. All the leverage in the system, I don't know how the street's going to ultimately interpret that. AMD right there, 493, up about 5.5% on the day. Redwire still up 23. Amid potential unwinding of the South Korean stock market, given how over-leveraged it is, have a catastrophic knock-on effect on the U.S. I think, to an extent, a lot of the South Korean leverage is not just in Samsung and SK Hynix; it's also in U.S. tech stocks. So yes, it could be kind of like a yen carry trade. But the yen carry trade was entirely macro-driven. A South Korea collapse would be more rooted in the context of like margin, which would hurt the U.S. I don't know if it would be yen carry trade level of hurt. And I also wonder if the dip, like, let's say an SK Hynix falls by 20%. I think you're gonna have a lot of people buying the dip. First of all, what's the catalyst to make that happen? I don't know. But second of all, you're gonna have a lot of South Koreans that buy that dip because they feel like they missed the entire run. Just like if Micron fell 20, 30%, you would have a lot of people in the United States buy that dip. So again, if the earnings continue to go up and the dips can continue to be subtle, the multiples continue to compress. And then if the dips get aggressive, the multiples really compress, like when Micron was trading at 3 times earnings, forward earnings, and buyers come in. And, you know, that's been the story with NVIDIA for a while, even though NVIDIA has not been able to have that massive pump because of its market cap. But it wouldn't be crazy to see that happening. Navius right there, that's down 1% as well. It does seem like some people, though, are betting their entire net worth into leverage. And, you know, that is not the case for, wow, Momentous just filed a $200 million mixed shelf offering. Like clockwork. Stock's down 30%, still up 70% on the day. Like clockwork. The stock's been down 99.9% for 5 years. They get a pump from a YouTuber. Boom. They dilute by 200 million. The market cap was 70 million. So they diluted 3x the market cap. Now it's 2x the market cap since the market cap's up 80% today. But there you go. But yeah, I think there are people that, you know, have put money to the side, and then there's people that are using the money that they have with leverage or trading or whatever. And then there's other people that are just like, screw it, YOLO, my entire net worth is in levered call options on AI names. And it's either risking it for the biscuit, and it's like, all right, this is what I'm doing. I'm taking this massive risk, and it's either going to work or it's not. Or it's being a bit more responsible with having some of that leverage, but not having all of your money tied up in that leverage. And right now, you know, I think we're seeing a lot more of the all-in type of attitude. But if it works and you can sell effectively and then diversify, that's the best of both worlds. It's just someone is going to hold the bag if you're selling it to them. And so the question is going to be, you know, who ends up holding the bag, or if that bag even needs to be held. If, you know, you sell AMD at 500 because you bought it at 200 and then AMD goes up to 1,000, right? Like if that's the nature of the bull market that we're on, then a lot of people are going to be rich, which is the cool part of how this bull market has been playing out. AMD pushing to 500, 494, trying to get there, but it is not there yet. Micron is very close to $1 trillion, 7 billion away at this point from $1 trillion in market cap. Pentagon spars with SpaceX over Starlink price hike during Iran war. SpaceX raised the Starlink connection cost fivefold to $25,000 per drone. Wow. The Pentagon ultimately agreed to higher fees. Musk has leverage over the Pentagon. Disputes extend to Starlink direct to sell in Iran for civilians coping with the web blackout. Elon kind of flexing his muscles right there with the Pentagon. 5x increase. Talk about pricing power, dude. Talk about pricing power. Yeah, it might be good for ASTS. ASTS almost 125. It did touch it for a second. All-time high is 129, which was back in January. You're now at 125.04. Okay, let's get a little bit more macro updates on the consumer PCE, and then we'll keep going from there.
Few weeks or so. And then as far as the odds, guys, 64% odds that the Fed actually hikes rates by December. But again, we haven't heard from Warsh yet. His first meeting will be June 16th, 17th. And we don't know, is he going to push for a tighter policy via the balance sheet, which is something he's pushed for before, and maybe a hold on rates at this point. We do know from the minutes, the meeting notes of the last meeting, that there's very little appetite at the Fed to cut rates, which they had been in the cutting mode. And there's consideration that they might need to hike if these prices go higher. That's the story.
Not sure Kramer was on board with that. Interesting take from Jim that maybe you're going to start to see signs of weakness. I mean, Walmart, worst 4 days for Walmart in 4 years.
There it is, folks. There it is for the Micron investors. This is your bell. $1 trillion in market cap. Micron is now, let's pull up the numbers, the 13th largest. It is $42 million away from being higher than Berkshire Hathaway in market capitalization. $1 trillion for Mr. MU right there. This is pretty incredible. 1 trillion, Berkshire 1.04, Samsung's at 1.3. So you have two memory companies in the top 20. SK Hynix is actually 968. So you've now got SK Hynix at number 14. So 3 memory companies are in the top 20 in terms of largest market capitalization on the planet. It's pretty incredible. June said 16,000 turned into 210,000 for me holding Micron for a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, Micron millionaires is probably a thing. You would imagine same thing with memory. 891 up 18% right there. DRAM should also be pumping $60. That's up 14%. How many trillion US dollar companies now? So we have Berkshire, Micron. That's 1, 2. Tesla, Meta, 4. Broadcom, 5. Amazon 6, Microsoft 7, Apple 8, and then NVIDIA, Google. So 10. You got 10 companies. $10 trillion companies in the United States of America, and AMD is $5 away from 500. It would not get to $1 trillion at 500. 600 gets you to $1 trillion, but still, making a massive, massive move right here. I mean, look, if the earnings estimates continue to go up, these stocks get re-rated. It's just that simple. It really is just that simple. Redwire right there up 27%. Qualcomm 244. That one was up 5, now up 2, but 2.4% here on the day. Broadcom also very nice to see this one catching a bid. This thing stuck in the low 400s for a while. I think this is moving with AMD. It's just hard for the street to keep this one down if AMD is moving. 434 on Mr. Broadcom. It's a bull market, folks. It is a bull freaking market. Again, not bull market everywhere, but in the semiconductor names, it is obviously pretty damn bullish. Nokia right there up 4.5% on the day. I know the number one question people are asking is, okay, how long can this continue? I don't know. I think the bull market itself can continue in terms of the sort of parabolic moves on a lot of the picks and shovel plays. How long can they continue? I think the street's accepted defeat on this idea that we're not going to buy the companies that are spending the CapEx. We're just going to buy the companies that are benefiting from the CapEx. And maybe that changes one day for whatever reason. It probably will eventually. Don't know when. But as of now, the CapEx beneficiaries, that's the story of this market. You either chase it, you either get a little bit of exposure, you trade it, you say, you know what, I missed it, that's okay. I'm going to buy stuff that I know will be heavily compounded, or you put a small amount there to speculate. But that really has been the story of the market the whole year. That and space has been the story of the market the whole year. And space really happened over the past couple of weeks because the SpaceX IPO, really, it's been the picks and shovels plays, whether it's energy, memory, photonics, etc., that have been more important than the GPUs themselves that are being sold. AppLovin, that's up a full 10.3%, 531. As that continues to go green. Is Iran still moving? Iran just below 60. SPY also all-time highs. There you go, 752. 751.90. 752. Planet Labs, that is up 14% as well. Yeah, that's probably why Google's up. Google's been stuck, but they do have a stake in Planet Labs, SpaceX, and Anthropic. Marco Rubio says it may take several days to finalize details of a potential agreement with Iran. He said Trump recently held regional calls on ending the conflict, but stressed the U.S. will only accept a good deal or none at all. Yeah, Zscaler does have earnings tomorrow. Zscaler 188.50. Okay, there you go. That is your core story today. As oil still slightly elevated from where it was last night, $94, but it is below 100. The Pope recently talked about AI as well and referenced Anthropic. Here's an update on that.
On the dangers of AI, the Pope, writing in part with the heart of a shepherd and a father, I ask everyone to abandon the construction of yet another Tower of Babel and to join forces in building up common good. Anthropic co-founder Christopher Olah joined the Pope at the Vatican yesterday and delivered similar remarks, warning that the technology companies need, quote, earnest, thoughtful critics as they develop new AI models. Let's bring in Byron Dieter. He's a partner at Bessemer Venture Partners, an Anthropic investor as well. Byron, good to have you. Want to get to the Pope, I guess, to sort of start off there. I'm just curious as to how you view the encyclical versus the business model of Anthropic and whether the two are compatible.
Great to be back with you, David. Thank you. And I think we're entering this phase where Anthropic is trying to pioneer this world of responsible AI. So we're going to go down this journey together. But as these models become more powerful, people can use them for all sorts of real world and business use cases. And it's important that we have a balance. And I think that's why you see this talent density building at Anthropic, as the leading researchers want to be part of not only their frontier approach and model, but their responsible approach to bring it to society.
Yeah, well, obviously the ethical implications of AI have been questioned for a while, and you're probably going to have more people questioning it. But in the context of earnings growth of AI, which is what a lot of us care about, we are seeing more and more of that momentum, and that is also what Yardeni talked about today, which is why he has S&P at 8250.
That's really what's been driving the market, not FOMO, not fear of missing out.
So it almost makes sense. I guess when I said not obvious, I meant given what's right in your face that causes people to think, oh my God,
of course,
stocks are, all the
there's
things
plenty
that
of things
make
to
you
worry about. Yeah.
Yeah. The people that they consistently build the wall of worry that the market climbs.
Yeah, I think what's been largely missed is the resilience of the economy. The economy is kind of like Rodney Dangerfield. It's been getting no respect.
And then we got to figure out what is responsible for that. We know it's the greatest economy in the world.
Yeah.
It always will, always has been. But then what else? Is it AI? Is it
I think
deregulation?
I think it was about in 2024 that everybody was talking about American exceptionalism, and then that the whole thesis kind of fizzled out in 2025. But we have amazing capital markets. There's a tremendous amount of capital available for innovation that's driving the technology revolution. The technology revolution is driving productivity, and productivity is fairy dust. It makes everything better in the economy: better growth, lower inflation, real wages go up, and profits are great.
I mean, you look at the rest of the world, and all you got to do is look at the leading companies in any industry, especially technology.
Right, they're here.
Over the last even 20 years, even back to Google, or I mean, even anything involving the internet, and then you got Amazon, then you got social media, and you got Meta, and now you've got AI. It's all happening. Biotechnology or pharmaceuticals.
That's a huge.
It's all here.
Yeah, it's all here.
Why?
Well, I think this is still a very entrepreneurial society. There's a lot of people that are constantly looking at opportunities to come up with better products, better services, cheaper, better. And we do creative destruction better than anybody.
When he talks about an entrepreneurial society and value accruing in the United States, it is shown in the data. So we looked at this chart last night, but it's pretty incredible. U.S. households' share of equities is now $57.7 trillion, up 156% since 2020. Part of that is the value of equities going up, but part of that also is a lot of inflows. This is now more than the value of real estate by 20%. So real estate right there, 9.8 trillion. Real estate is 9.8 trillion less than the 57.7 trillion, but the fact that it has a 20% disparity between equities, once again, gives the market a lot of more momentum, and a lot of people get a lot more excited about it, which is why more flows are coming into stocks. Qualcomm, we got an update from them. Is this one up? Qualcomm, there's the move. Strikes AI chip deal with TikTok owner ByteDance. There is your pump on Mr. Qualcomm. I think this is what the street has kind of known about for the past couple of weeks, which is why the option flows have been going crazy. There it is. Qualcomm strikes AI chip deal with ByteDance. This is either getting re-rated up to 300 now, or this is going to take a breather. But obviously, it took a breather last week below 200, and now at 250 based on this headline. I'm trying to see if I can get more details on this. What exactly is the partnership? Also, is this a data center chip? Is this something that's going to be going into different phones or wearable devices with ByteDance? Qualcomm has secured an AI chip agreement with ByteDance. That's the only headline I'm seeing. Nothing else on that. What do the analysts have Qualcomm's price targets at? Qualcomm, they have it at 178. Wow. So pretty much every analyst has a significantly lower. It's got, I think they're waiting for the next earnings to re-rate this. 130, 140, 150. The most bullish analyst has a 280 price target, and that's only one person. So this is more of, I think, the street kind of front running, even without the details, that the earnings growth is going to come for Qualcomm as one of the chip names that just hasn't run as much as some of the other ones right now. Qualcomm year to date is now up 50%. Oh, here's that. All right, here it is. So ByteDance is set to procure millions of Qualcomm chips known as application-specific integrated circuits, ASICs, which help support the social media company's AI agent software. Okay, so I think these are data center chips. If these are ASICs, Qualcomm's partnership with ByteDance can provide a key opportunity, a high volume customer, and a path into the fastest growing segments of the semi industry. The US company now makes chips through TSM. So as long as Qualcomm chips fall within legally acceptable computing thresholds, Qualcomm partners wouldn't run afoul of existing US restrictions. They don't say how much it's worth. ByteDance is set to procure millions of Qualcomm chips, which will help support the social media company's AI agent software. I think these are data center chips, or data center ASICs, I should say. ARM should benefit. Yeah, that is actually a good point. Is ARM still above 300? ARM, yeah, 311. Qualcomm and ARM have very close relationships. Same thing with Intel and ARM. BTC, is that going up? That is, oh my goodness, dude. I think as soon as the Qualcomm news came out, everyone was like, oh, got to sell something to buy Qualcomm. And Bitcoin, look at that, 77.9 to 76.7 within 5 minutes. Micron getting hit from that $1 trillion market cap, but still pretty close at 991, S&P 751. And then Qualcomm kind of got sold off at 258, now back at 250. So you're seeing some people sell the news there. I think they're looking for more details, but it is a really good update in the context of if they're going to be selling more chips. T1, this continues to move as well, 24% on the day. Yeah, also good for Amcor. That is fair. What is Qualcomm's market cap? Is anyone buying Qualcomm here? 250 on a re-rating play? I know some people are in this thing from the low 200s. 265 billion. Price to sales is 6, so it's not that aggressive. PE is also not that aggressive. Obviously, the growth has not really been there the past few years, which is why the stock has been flat for 5 years. But now there's a different interpretation of that growth. AMD got rejected at 496, now back to 491. Might be a rumor. I mean, that is fair. None of the companies have confirmed it yet. This is a Bloomberg report. If you're on Cactus Jack, you would get the full report. I don't even know how Cactus found this because it's like a legit Bloomberg article that you don't have to pay for because he just put a screenshot in there. So I don't know how he gets this shit, but he finds a way to get this shit. So there you go. It's in the feed. Bloom Energy, is that one getting sold off? Bloom Energy, that one's getting sold off as well. Do we add Micron to the Mag 8? Maybe. May freaking be. I think, again, the biggest concern with Micron and a lot of these other names is you can think Google's going to be around 10 years from now and still growing. Do you think Micron's going to be still growing at exponential levels? If you just look at their history of earnings estimates, no. It's like every 4 or 5 years, they get the boom, they get the bust, which is why the multiple stays low. If this AI build-out lasts way longer than expected, like not 5 years, not 10 years, maybe even longer than that, and Micron diversifies in the meantime, then maybe it doesn't matter that it has historically been cyclical, and maybe it will be a company that can hold on to its momentum. It's just, again, every time you say that, you look at the history of Samsung and our SK High. I mean, Samsung has had plenty of rallies over the past 30 years. It's just every time when demand dries up. I mean, same thing with NVIDIA, right? When the crypto GPUs went away in terms of demand back in 2021, NVIDIA fell by 70%. The reason NVIDIA's made this run is because the market's concluded the GPUs will continue to be sold for a long time. And so then that begs the question, if the GPUs are going to be sold, the memory is going to be sold with it. It's like, yeah, but the memory is a commodity. It's like, well, memory might not be as much of a commodity if it is the most important part of the stack. And that begs the question on, if memory is going to be innovated away or if there's going to be the same type of pricing power. It ultimately comes down to, do you believe that is sustainable? But I think that's the same like Qualcomm. Qualcomm's going to need to get a lot more than just the TikTok deal to convince the street that their chip business outside of Snapdragon and the CPUs for mobile devices can lead them into the data center build out over the next 10 years. But obviously this one is very encouraging. And the question is just going to be, can they get more of those? Datadog, is that one making a move? Datadog up about 0.5%. So that's a little green. What are your thoughts on fuel cell energy? I still have not looked that deep into this one, but this one and T1 are getting a little bit more excitement in terms of AI. And, you know, being compared to Bloom. Bloom had a lot of legitimacy towards the tech and then the early deals that they got. And some of these guys don't really have that yet. But then again, that's kind of, you know, when you buy them before this. So it's more so speculative, but it's also speculative in the right theme where, again, if any of these companies get a big deal with a hyperscaler, they're going up, which is what you're seeing right now with Qualcomm. D-Wave, I don't know why that's down 8%. I don't know whether quantum names are going to hit today. Leopold is also very long CleanSpark, which is up 8.5% today. CleanSpark and Keel. CleanSpark, Keel, and Iren are his biggest AI HPC plays. He's not in Nebius. CoreWeave is the other big one that he has. And those names haven't really taken off. So, you know, potentially a signal that he thinks there's going to be a bigger deal with them. Nokia 1615, that's up 4%. BlackBerry, that is up 5%. As well as that continues to go green. GE Veranova, that one also perfect example of the Halo trade. Not wow. 300 billion on this one, up another 5% today. Are you buying leaps with Noto? You know, if SoFi had the December 2028 option chain, I would be more excited about it. I think that $20 leap 2 years out is not crazy. They only have June right now. I think maybe in a couple months they'll have December. But again, I think it's still hard to be excited to buy SoFi unless you think rates are coming down. And that's not my opinion. That's literally what Noto said. So that's kind of, I think, what's keeping it getting re-rated. Not to mention when all the liquidity is going into the semis, you know, the fintech names are just left for dead. So then it's a question of how much do you want to allocate in your portfolio knowing that those names are probably going to be left for dead for a while. Zeta right there up 3.4, and then Amcor up 14% on the day. Amit, can you put in a word with Musk to unsuspend our accounts? How did you get your account suspended? What did you do, Krishna? Were you like spamming replies to somebody or something? Sometimes they ban it for weird reasons. Like it just happens kind of randomly. ASTS 19%, 125. As that is not slowing down. He said the stock fell because of rate expectations. He didn't say rates need to come down for the stock to go up. That's fair, but he did say the perception of rates coming down needs to change, right? And I mean, look, that's the bullet. Look, if oil really starts to come down, the expectations on a rate cut should rise, which means SoFi should be an easy buy, given how discounted it is from these levels. It's just, you know, I think people might want to actually see that start being priced in, whereas right now, at least this Federal Reserve isn't super excited to cut rates. Ondas right there, up 11 as well. How is ARK doing? ARK has been interesting, dude. It has been one of the it's just been one of the most monumental bull markets we've had over the past 5 years. ARK is down 30%. It's kind of unbelievable, dude. It's kind of unfreaking believable. Like, you talk about innovation, and that innovation is stuck in Roku and Zoom and some names that have had a little bit of a run, but it's kind of incredible. She still manages about 7 billion. Still manages, at the peak, it was about 30 billion. So you don't have that same type of hype in ARK anymore. But the reason I think there is a little bit of criticism that deserves to be being put at ARK is because they pride themselves on research. And, you know, I like some of the research, but I think the research fundamentally is like, it missed everything. Like if you're gonna have that much research, you can't be that stuck in crypto names if all the research is pointing towards this transformational technology called AI, and they really don't have a lot of exposure. I mean, they got rid of all their NVIDIA years ago, which is kind of the craziest thing in the world. Like they're so bullish on AI, but they called NVIDIA Cisco. I mean, do you guys remember the research reports they put out comparing NVIDIA to Cisco? This was back in 2024. Like that's the craziest part of what's happened with ARK. You don't have to get every single AI name that takes off, but to miss the biggest one and you're bullish on AI and you guys saw AI before, it's kind of wild. But yeah, ARK has not had the biggest move right here. Yeah, and then she brought Cerebras last week. It's like you sell NVIDIA and you buy the quote-unquote NVIDIA killer at an unbelievably stupid valuation, whereas NVIDIA trades at 17 times forward. Cerebras trades at 102 times price to sales after the 30% decline, which means I don't want to know what the price of sales was back when it was at 380. Like unbelievable, dude. Some of these decisions, it's quite incredible. Micron back to 880, NVIDIA 215. She's mostly into high growth. Yeah, but NVIDIA is the fastest growing company that's out there at their scale. I guess Micron's growing faster than NVIDIA, but outside of, a few, I don't even think what is Micron's, I know their EPS growth is 600%. Their revenue growth, yeah, I think it's probably close to NVIDIA's at 90 to 100%. But the fact that NVIDIA at 5 trillion is growing at that level, you're talking about high growth, or even AMD as they've compounded now at 35%. It has been pretty incredible to see how that growth has started to come through. Kevin Warsh, again, is going to be the new Fed chair. He was sworn in on Friday. So we're going to see how the market begins to interpret him. 751 on Kevin Warsh. What do you think about Zeta? 50% revenue growth. I think it is cheap. And maybe we start to catch a little bit of a bid here into the 20s. OpenAI partnership, I thought, was a pretty strong partnership for their first-party data moat. The thing about Zeta that's really important to understand is they have 550 million connected human beings first-party data. That is why they're able to grow at the level they're growing at. And the synergy with AI is that they're a platform that is AI native to the data that they have, not a platform that is servicing software for other companies with their own proprietary data. That is why Trade Desk has been destroyed over the past year, whereas Zeta is growing 50%, 30% organically. So it's a very simple difference. Now, it's not a sexy story, so the street doesn't care about it. Eventually, I think free cash flow catches up to the earnings growth. But, once again, it's not a semiconductor name. So even though the fundamental thesis, I think, is very strong, the liquidity is not necessarily there. Nebius still red. ServiceNow, that one is also still red. ASTS is about to hit all-time highs. Wow, 127 on Mr. ASTS. Satellogic, that's also up 10.5%. Where is that momentous thing you guys were talking about? Still up 73% even after the dilution. Someone just bought $5 million of the Rocket Lab 175 calls for August 2026. This is why every time I think of trimming Rocket Lab, I'm like, wait a second. How crazy is this going to get? Wow. They paid above the ask, $5.2 million of premium. Someone also just bought 800 grand of IREN $65 calls for this week. So you got some IREN momentum here. And then you've got the Rocket Labs of the world getting more of that love. I just paid for Cactus Jack. How do you get access? So on the website, you just have to click the button that says connect with WhatsApp. I will also, by the way, put a button on this. I haven't put a button yet that allows you to cancel the subscription. I kind of forgot that I need to have that button there. So there will be a button soon that says cancel subscription. But you don't get access to it after you pay. Paying is optional. You get access by pressing that button. So if you press that button, you get access to it. If you want to support the feed, you can, but the payment is not required to get access to the feed. And so that's the link right there. American Airlines partners with SpaceX to install Starlink Wi-Fi on 500 Airbus planes. Is that up? American Airlines is up 7%. You know, I think this is a great thing. A, because you got the SpaceX IPO coming up and you need more of these juicy headlines. B, it is so nice when you get on a flight and you have some freaking Wi-Fi. And as I've been on more United flights and their partnership with SpaceX and Starlink, it's just been nice to be able to like watch a YouTube video when you're 35,000 feet up in the air. United as well, 105. That is also green. That is also green. Redwire up 26. You know, maybe SpaceX announces these Starlink partnerships with a lot more airlines before the IPO and gets the street to be even more excited about what that Starlink business could look like. 126.18 on ASTS, just below 127. It just came out at 11 a.m. American Airlines to offer Starlink internet on flights. SpaceX has pushed to become a dominant in-flight internet provider, reaching deals with United, Southwest, Alaska Air, and now American Airlines. Oh, that's also fair. Airlines are up today because fuel is down. Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of these are kind of contingent on the oil trade. But my United experience has gotten significantly better since the Starlink partnership. So hopefully that continues to be the case. ASTS, very close to these all-time highs, 125.90. Amit, would you consider Monish Prabhai for basis points? I would love to have Monish on the show. He is a legend. It'd be awesome to talk to him. We got to see. You know, the good thing about having a big episode like we did over the weekend is it introduces the pod to a lot more people. And so, you know, when we try to pitch some of these bigger names of coming onto the show, you know, they theoretically are more likely to be excited for it. So hopefully we can see. He is bearish S&P 500 though. This was what he said in a latest podcast. Same thing with Howard Marks. They're both kind of bearish the S&P in general right now.
Mm-hmm. Anytime that had happened.
Yeah.
So I'm just want to give you kind of like a just quick reaction, bullish, bearish on the S&P index right now. If you were to be an investor,
bearish.
Same reason.
Yeah, I don't. Howard is very, very smart. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. GLP-1s. So
Howard Marks' argument was that if you buy the S&P 500 at this multiple, the 10-year return ends up being -2% to 0. So now it's not surprising. These guys are stock pickers. They don't buy the index, but they generally don't want the index elevated at these levels, which is why you're seeing a little bit more of a bearish tone on that. Paul Tudor Jones now has 31.8 million shares of IREN. Interesting. Paul Tudor Jones. Did we look at his 13F? I feel like we didn't see much of his 13F. Wait, but hold on. He has convertible bonds on IREN. I don't think he has direct IREN shares. Am I wrong on that? I might be wrong on that. His latest 13F shows he owns 73 million worth of IREN convertible bonds, which technically means he has exposure to the shares. I'll try to look deeper on that. But, you know, he's not alone. Him, Leopold, and you got some decent amount of people that are thinking IREN will be the next big data center winner. They just need a massive deal. They just haven't had that yet. The day they have that deal, I do think that stock gets re-rated really quickly. It just, you know, has not put up the type of deals that CoreWeave and Nebius have put yet. Yeah, I don't know if he officially has shares. I see convertibles on his 13F. I have to look at some of the other websites and see if he has shares. He is obviously super bullish on AI in general, even though he you know, he did say it's kind of 1999. He's riding up the bull momentum.
You say you bought more AI stocks. Was that the big hyperscalers? Was that the semiconductor chips?
So again, I'm a macro trader.
Yep.
So I just buy baskets, and what I would simply say is it's a crazy time. If I had to pick, you know, I love always to find historical precedents. You can kind of look at the productivity miracle around the introduction of the PC, 81, 82. really 81, 77. See, I would kind of say 1977 when Apple dropped theirs was kind of like ChatGPT, but it wasn't until Microsoft brought their PC in 81 when you got widespread commercial adoption. So ChatGPT in 22, I kind of think Claude Code January of this year would be the equivalent of when Microsoft came out in 80.
So if he has those 31 million shares and convertible notes, obviously he has publicly said he's buying more AI stocks. I mean, look, folks, if the AI growth story is not slowing down, these AI stocks will get bought up on the dip and they will continue going higher. There will have to be an epic top that is placed for all of this stuff to come crashing down aggressively, which maybe doesn't happen this year, next year, or even a few years from now. But I don't think it's naturally going to just fizzle out. Now, if it does, that's the best case scenario, right? If like slowly these stocks start to consolidate and chill, and it's not just like a 80% down in a few months NASDAQ type of topping like we did in the dot-com bubble. But a lot of these business models would have to diversify, improve, and have sustainable growth on earnings after the overall GPU cycle is built out. It's just, that cycle seems to be going longer and longer than expected based on all the checks that I think we've seen when it comes to CapEx. CrowdStrike right there, new all-time high, 672, as that continues to go green. Why did he say ChatGPT? Dude, he's like me. Sometimes you make mistakes when you're live, Sometimes you talk about comedians being basketball players. And it is what it is. But the worst part about the Knicks getting to the finals is I don't know if we have a shot in hell of beating OKC or the Spurs. Like, I really don't know if we even have a chance to win one game, as much as I love the Knicks. But could you imagine if we somehow win against OKC or the Spurs? Could you, somehow we pull it off? New York would be crazy. Like, that's why I want to go to a game. The first finals game we win, I want to be there. I just also don't think we have a shot to win those guys. Have you watched any of the games? I've seen some highlights. I was watching the game on Saturday, or I think it was Friday with OKC. Wemby is just a different animal. Oh, they were actually playing last night, right? Yeah, the Knicks were playing last night. Knicks winning, it all would be the market top. The last time the Knicks went to the finals, beloved 1999, the market crashed the year later. So maybe that's our topsicle, the Knicks getting back to the finals. But at least if we're there, if we could win it, that would be nice. Yeah, the flopping on SGA is becoming a bit ridiculous. It is like some of these videos of him falling down and getting called for fouls. It's like really making it unwatchable. And so I agree. I really hope the refs kind of change up going into the finals, but I don't know if they will. But it is egregious seeing some of these fouls that are called on him. And it's like, hold on. This is not making a ton of sense right now. S&P 750, Zeta 1931, Rocket Lab almost 145. Didn't touch 145 yet, 20 cents away from getting there. Finally, someone said it. I haven't even watched that many games this year of the OKC, but the few games I have sat and watched are the highlights. These are not fouls. These are not fouls at all. The refs calling this stuff is kind of just unbelievable how they're giving them these calls. Especially when someone like LeBron can barely get a call. And he actually does get fouled many times. So it has been very weird to see that. Is NVIDIA red? Oh my goodness, NVIDIA went red. Dude, take her below 200 at this point. Just put us out of our misery. Give us a real dip on this bad boy. Micron at $1 trillion, which is 25% of NVIDIA's market cap. Why doesn't NVIDIA just go to 500 billion at this point? At this point, we don't really care about the GB300s, the Vera Rubins, the Feynmans. We don't need any of this stuff. We just need the memory and the photonics and the packaging. That's all we need. We don't really need the GPUs anymore. Goodness, that's incredible. 213. Sorry, 20% of 5 trillion, not 25%. Dude, I can't get away with anything. I cannot get away with anything. Pronunciation mistakes, comedian into basketball players mistakes, mathematical mistakes. There's too many of you for me to even kind of get away with something. Mid buy the finals ticket. Think of all the money you've blown throughout the decades. You'll probably never get the opportunity like this again. If I don't get an opportunity for the rest of my life to buy a Knicks finals tickets, it means the Knicks are never getting to the finals, which would suck if that doesn't happen again in my life. But still, bro, it's $4,000. Like, I really thought about it last night. Like, I really thought, I'm like, okay, like, it's an experience. But then I'm like, bro, 4,000 is like a vacation. Like, the flight to Singapore was $2,500. I'm going to pay $4,000 to sit in the back of MSG. Like, and I couldn't go with any friends because I don't think anyone's going to come with me, and no one's going to spend $4,000 to be like, it's kind of stupid. Especially when I could watch that at home and be more relaxed. So I don't know. I don't know if I love them that much to spend that much money. Rocket Lab 145. There it is. $145 on Mr. Lab of Rockets. Rocket Lab is now an $84 billion company. 123 times price to sales. I think the most Palantir ever traded at was 130. Palantir was at 420 billion, so 420. Yeah, it was around 130, 135. So Rocket Lab is now approaching on that price to sales multiple. She's going to 150, bro. 150 is a sexier number. That's where she's going. SoFi 16, 14, that gapping up a little bit. Nokia still above 16. Microsoft also with NVIDIA. Even that Anthropic news of them buying their chips wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Rocket Lab is going to crash so hard after the SpaceX IPO. I don't know, man. I obviously think there's a world where this thing can have a really ugly pullback, but I also think there's a world in which, not that it can sustain the level of valuation, it can grow into the valuation. And if it does have an ugly dip, you know, maybe that dip is 110, 115, which would be bad from 145, but it's not like it's going back to 70 unless the SpaceX IPO completely fails, which I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen. But I will be live the whole day for the SpaceX IPO because that is obviously going to be a very, very important one for us to all see. Yeah, ASTS at 50 billion. I mean, look, value ASTS trades at 575 times price to sales. At the end of the day, it's a space theme. Like, if you're not in the space names, it's hard to buy them here. If you're not in the memory names, it's also hard to buy them, but the memory names are still cheap. That's the difference. I don't think the space names are necessarily cheap. Just like, you know, they're not as profitable and the revenue is not that aggressive. But the thesis was never just based on that. The thesis was more so based on, obviously, at least in my opinion, the SpaceX trade. The memory names are actually cheap. The valuation is not that crazy. So it's one of those things where you got to pick your poison if you are allocating new capital into these themes. And, you know, maybe space does better just because the SpaceX IPO does well, even if Micron and SanDisk are cheaper. Where is Tesla? Is Tesla still green? Tesla 433. That ended up flipping green from 420. We have TT today. Yes, we should have TT. I'm shorting Rock Lab all day at these levels. Look, again, I think hedging is decent and dealing with, you know, what happens with the hedge is fine. Just shorting, though, I don't know, dude. You got to be super confident they've topped. Got to be super freaking confident they've topped. I mean, who's to say Rock Lab can't get up to 175, 200? I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. I mean, even after the dilution, if this thing can't come down, the shorts will be really underwater if that were to take place. What is Rocket Lab's short float? Is it even aggressive? ASTS is almost 20%. Rocket Lab is 5%. There's not even, see, there's like, so you can't even, this is not even a squeeze that's happening on Rocket Lab. This is all, in my opinion, fundamental based flows that are coming in, even if you think the valuation is not rooted in fundamentals, that are tracking SpaceX. And I think the institutions are just saying it's easier for us to get exposure via Rocket Lab versus buying the IPO. It might just be really that simple. Having said that, obviously it's incredibly volatile. ASTS right there, just below 126. What do you think of Meta? I think it's cheap. I think Zucks is going to eventually figure this out. I do think if the stock stays stuck for the next year, next 6 months, let's say, till the end of the year at 600, I think that Zucks is going to have to make a decision. Either the decision is going to be to lower CapEx, which is not going to be good for the semiconductor trade, or sell compute, which would open up a new line of business, which I think would be good for re-rating Meta, but I don't know if they want to get into that business. Here's the other thing: if they forget lowering CapEx and that being bad for Nvidia, what if that's bad for Meta? Because one could argue, oh, if they lower CapEx, they have more free cash flow. It's like, sure, but what if they lower CapEx and Google and Microsoft and Amazon raise CapEx? And if those companies are raising CapEx and Meta's lowering CapEx, what if they're seen as like the company that can't figure out how to monetize AI, which is why they're not spending more on AI, and then their multiple gets re-rated even worse to the downside? So there's a lot of risks in regards to how Meta is thinking of the CapEx. I still think the fundamentals of the business are undervalued, and like it is a buy here, in my opinion. In the low 500s, it becomes a screaming buy. But I also do think Zuck's turning excess compute into a neo cloud. I mean, it's a really simple way to get the multiple to re-rate and give the market what it wants. Just like in 2022, he did mass layoffs, gave the market what they wanted. Maybe setting up that Meta compute type of business makes that happen. I'm not sure if that's going to take the place. Meta's already monetizing AI, though. Yeah, it's just, here's the thing. Meta's monetizing AI, so is Reddit, but the market doesn't like how they're monetizing AI, which is the part that really freaks me out about this market. It's like they want ROI on AI. Meta spends all this CapEx to get massive growth, like real 33%. No other company besides NVIDIA is growing 33% top line. Not Google, not Tesla, not Amazon. They're not doing that. Their cloud businesses are growing really well, but not top line. So Meta's growing that top line. And then the street's like, yeah, but you're not selling AI infrastructure or compute to other companies. Therefore, we don't think you're a legit AI company because it's only working with advertising. And it's like Meta's been public for 15 years at this point. Advertising has always been the thesis. There's never been a separate thesis to Meta besides ads. And ads are growing like crazy because of the AI targeting that they are showing the ROI on. Operating income is near freaking 150 billion. And the street's like, yeah, we don't like it because you're not selling infrastructure. As Palantir flip screen, which is just unbelievable to me. And it feels like a real dislocation between the narrative and the stock. But nonetheless, the money's gone to Google and Amazon this year because they're selling infrastructure. But then you look at Microsoft, that is selling infrastructure, and they're growing that 40%, but because they have software offerings, the street's upset about it. Like, it's just such a weird year for the Mag 7s. I think eventually it solves itself over time, but that's why all of them have been so hip. Where's Tesla? Are we still red? Tesla is red. Yep, 1.2%. App's up 4% because a report says Meta is not going to be that competitive for them. So that's why that stock's up 10%. Matt, what do you think about Charter? So I talked to Steve about Charter today. Chris pitched it last night on his show. So Charter is going to do more in EBITDA this year than the entire market cap of the company. They're going to do $21 billion in EBITDA. Their market cap is $17 billion. They're going to be buying back their stock. Free cash flow going through the roof. What was the other big part of the thesis? It was free cash flow, EBITDA. Oh, their debt. Everyone points to their debt. Their debt is like less than 4%. Right? So their debt is not 7-8% type of debt, like even freaking Google has 5-6% debt. Like, the debt is manageable, the buybacks are good, the free cash flow is strong, and the EBITDA growth they're doing is more than the market cap. Like, it's unbelievable. So then the question is, why is the stock down? Well, the reason the stock is down is because people are canceling their cable TV. It's kind of just that simple. Netflix, Hulu, YouTube Premium, all of these things have led to cable subscribers going down substantially. And there's other parts of the Charter thesis for how they reverse that, but there's not growth that's priced in. And that's the issue with Charter. So if you buy this, you're buying it on a pure deep value play and the understanding that growth eventually is figured out. But right now, growth has completely been priced out of the stock. The analysts don't see any real meaningful growth coming over the next couple of years. And so that's why it's in deep value territory. I kind of like Shopify and Reddit more because at the end of the day, I am more of a growth investor and I'm seeing massive growth on Reddit and Shopify. And both those stocks are down even more than Charter's down year to date, even if they're not as deep value as Charter. So I don't think Charter is horrible right here. I just think if you're buying it for growth, you're not getting growth. You have to be buying it for something else besides growth, which means the stock could re-rate. But there's other names that are growing like crazy that are, still down a lot. Yeah, it's down 80% over the past 5 years, which is why it's theoretically in that deep value territory. But you are not really getting growth. And I think that's the larger concern with Charter right now. Navitas still up 13% on the day right now. Amit, would you pay the atrocious prices for tickets to watch the FIFA World Cup? To be honest, guys, I really I never cared that much about soccer or football, as you guys would call it. I don't know. I'd rather watch basketball than football. So I probably would pay for an MSG ticket before I pay for a World Cup ticket. The only game I've watched for football is Messi in the World Cup in 2022. That's the only game I watched ever in my whole life. And I grew up in a school that had a lot of Brazilian and Portuguese kids, and so they talked about soccer and football all the time. I used to go to some of their games and watch. So I grew up with it, at least in high school, but it didn't become part of me. Basketball is what I really care. I'm saying football because if I said soccer, all the international people will get mad. So I'm saying football, not football. It's football. I want to call it soccer because that's what it is, but you guys don't think that's a thing. So yeah, I don't really care about the World Cup. It's just not. I care more about the NBA Finals than the World Cup. But obviously, I know internationally it's going to be respected a lot more. You've said it wrong. I did not say it wrong. It's football. No one says football. They say football. You're talking about the NFL. You got to put the accent on the O's to make it refer to soccer. But yeah, it's just never been a big thing for me long term. Okay, is that it for us today? Are we done? S&P all-time highs, Palantir flipping green, Micron hit $1 trillion, AppLovin up 9%. Hopefully we can keep this momentum going. NVIDIA red, why not? ASTS up 18, Rocket Lab up 7. Massive day for a lot of these names. Some of these names not getting love, but overall oil down, 10 years down. Hopefully all of this continues to go further down and we'll see some broader green. No, we're not down. We have to discuss football. How many of you guys actually legit watch soccer? Let's do a poll on that. How many people watch soccer here? He's rage baiting. I'm not rage baiting. I'm that's how you freaking say it. That's how you say it. I feel like a lot of you guys, because you're more international, 85% of you guys said green today. The question will be, is football your favorite sport? Let's see. Yeah, see, I don't know what Arsenal is or La Liga, Premier League, or Real Madrid, or I don't know any of this. There's so many leagues in football as well. There's so many different leagues. The NBA is the NBA, NFL, MLB. Maybe there's a little league, but then in soccer there's 1 billion different leagues, and there's always some new person winning a championship. I was always so confused. I've never been able to really, keep up with it. So yeah, the EPL, there's so many different ways to think about it. But it will be in the United States, so the World Cup will be important. All right, cool. Let's do word of the day, and then we're out of here. We'll be back for the close. I believe Jason should be on today. I will make sure he is, but I'm pretty sure he'll be on today. And so we will have a ton of TT. We have a couple of companies that have earnings, but tomorrow is really the big earnings that we have. Today we have Zscaler. The cybersecurity names have been on a tear, so maybe this one continues. Yeah, Manchester City. I don't know any of this stuff, dude. I've heard of all these names, but do not know enough of them. All right, we are on a 9-day streak for the word of the day. So we need to keep this going. Okay, 52% of you said yes on soccer being your favorite sport. So a lot of the international folks likely said yes here. Here we go. 10 days in a row. Can we do it? Okay, let's sound it out. Paul McCall. It's got to be Paul McCall. That's reasonable. Paul McCall. There's no way I get that wrong. Strongly argumentative or controversial, especially in speech or writing. The article was deliberately Paul McCall. I feel like I'm saying it wrong, but it's not Paul McCall. Like it's Paul Mickle. It's not that. It was written to provoke debate, not consensus. Paul McCall. That's what I'm going for. Paul McCall. I really don't think that's wrong. Polemical? Oh, wait, hold on. Sir Wordy. It's a great polemical makes way more sense. I think I'm going to switch. Shout out to Sir Wordy for the assist right there. Polemical. I think I'm going with that. Polemical sounds so stupid. Polemical. See, this is what I'm saying. When you guys say I'm trolling on these, I'm trying to get you to understand how I think. I am not trolling. Like polemical is what reasonably is what I thought it sounded like. Polemical, way better. Polemical, let's see what this sounds like. It makes way more sense. Let's see, polemical. Let's see. The streak, does it continue?
Polemical.
Streak continues. That's not cheating. That's not cheating. That is a okay, we're introducing a new rule on word of the day. We're doing phone a friend. Okay. I have 3 phone a friends, just like in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I should have 3 lifelines. I have 3 phone a friends. So I'm gonna write a Google Doc right now. This is the most reasonable way to keep the streak going. Phone a friend, word of the day. Tuesday, May 26th, 1 used. That's not crazy. I'm allowed to have some help. Why else is the chat there if I'm not going to get any help? The streak is not dead. We're allowed to have. Look, it's 3 phone a friends is not crazy at all. That's like actually very reasonable when you're like trying to attempt to have longevity in something. So I'm sticking with this word of the day streak, dude. We got 10 days. Polemical. Dude, I also said polemical. I almost said polemical. That would have been embarrassing. Thank you, Sir Wendy, or Sir Wordy, for being here. And that was our phone a friend. You're moving the goalpost. I am absolutely moving the goalpost, but I think it's a reasonable goalpost. Like if we really want to start the streak over again, we can, but I feel like we're allowed to keep it going with three phone friends. It's not too crazy. So look, to end the streak, I just have to get 1 word wrong. So if I get the word wrong tomorrow, it's over. But 3 phone a friend. Like, why are you guys telling me how to say it in the chat if you didn't want to help? Right? Like, am I just supposed to not look at the chat? Like, really, from first principles, if we think about it, I'm so misusing the word first principles right there. But if we're really thinking about it logically, why would you guys tell me how to say it and expect me to not look while I'm trying to say it? You know what I mean? It's because you want to help a friend. So there you go. That's what we got. All right. That's it for me. Thank you all for being here. We'll be back tonight for the market close. Again, we have Zscaler earnings. We'll get Jason on. And I think that's pretty much it. Let's see if this momentum can continue. If we get some updates on this Iran deal, see this broad market rally continue to be strong. And if it does, I know it's not affecting every part of the market, but this core semiconductor trade is not slowing down yet. Oil coming down would be kind of the bigger catalyst to keep this going. All right. That's it for me. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Tonight on the Market Open. And we'll keep going from there. Again, Cactus Jack, while I am gone, I really do think it is one of the best news feeds. A lot of people have been asking for Telegram, and they've been asking for an independent website with the news feeds. We're working on it. We're going to try to figure out how to make this syndicate and get distributed across a variety of different outlets. But right now it's on WhatsApp, and hopefully we'll figure out a couple of different channels for distribution. So hopefully people will continue to enjoy it. That works out. There's no phone a friend on a winning streak. That's fair. I definitely just made it up. But like, you guys put it in the chat. Like, what am I supposed to do? Not look at it? Like, we gotta keep this streak going somehow. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Why do I keep saying tomorrow, dude? I'll see you guys tonight. I keep thinking today's like Monday. It's like, I'll see you guys later today on the Market Close. And we'll be back. All right. Thank you, everybody. See you guys later.